As we're live.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see if we've got a full crowd here. And looks like we're still have attendees checking in. Give it just one moment. Everybody get checked in and seated. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Glenn Morris. I have the honor of being the chair of the Santa Barbara Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, and it is my honor to call our meeting of May 19th to order at 6:04 p.m. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. And Ms. Tilton, could we ask you to get us started with a roll call, please?
Yes, First District Commissioner Trotsky.
Present.
First District Commissioner Twibell.
Present.
Second District Commissioner McClintock.
Present.
Second District Vice Chair Turley. Present. Third District Commissioner Bradley.
Present.
Third District Commissioner Almeida.
Present.
Fourth District Commissioner Bray.
Present.
And Fourth District Commissioner Ochoa has advised that she's unable to attend this meeting this evening. Fifth District Commissioner Rios.
Present.
And Fifth District Chair Morris.
Present. Okay, so we have a quorum and we will move forward. Next items on the agenda, item number 2, related to ex parte communication. I would remind the public and point you to the county's website, the address indicated in the agenda, where ex parte communication, there's a link to a form used by the commissioners to report that those communications, rather than doing that verbally in our meetings as we go. Also would point relative to agenda item number 3, individuals who represent or are aware of community organizations that would be appropriate and useful as outreach partners for the commission in our work. There is a form that you may use there on the county website, again, to put us in contact with those organizations, and our staff will follow up and include them in our outreach as we move forward. With that, we will turn to public comment. Again, this session of public comment is intended for comments on items not on our agenda yet to come this evening. And Ms. Tilton, could you explain to folks how that'll work, and then lead us through any comments that folks may want to make?
Yes, today's meeting is remote, virtual only through the Zoom webinar information identified on the public agenda. The meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the internet at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc. Public participation during the meeting can only be done through the Zoom webinar link or by calling the phone number provided on the agenda. For those using the Zoom webinar link, please indicate that you wish to speak during public comment by selecting the raise your hand feature. Attendees by phone can raise your hand by pressing *9. When called upon, please state your name for the record. We reserve the right to mute a microphone for profane, harassing, or offensive language, or for speaking beyond the time limit set. And the time limit for public comment is set at 3 minutes. Recordings of the commission meetings, agendas, supplemental materials, and minutes of the commission are available on the internet at the same redistricting webpage cited earlier at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc.
And do we have any volunteers to speak?
We do have 2 hands raised. The first is Lee Heller, followed by Jose Leon. We have several hands raised. Lee Heller.
Good evening, Ms. Heller.
Chair Morris and commissioners, can you hear me? I didn't get the unmute prompt I usually get, so.
You're good.
Okay, thank you
Good evening.
for clarifying that. Good evening. Good to see you all. I was the one who asked whether or not public comment was going to happen last week, not because I thought we should have substantive discussion on the first two interviews, but because I wanted to correct a misstatement that was made during Mr. Alvarez's interview. He talked about wanting to be on the commission because he wanted to represent Guadalupe and that Guadalupe was the only city without representation. But in fact, the city of Carpinteria, which is almost half again as large as Guadalupe, does not have a commissioner. And having been their volunteer of the year 1 year, I would like to say that Guadalupe is as attached to its culturally unique identity as any other community in the district. Buellton does not have a commissioner, and Isla Vista, although not a city, just a community services district, and maybe I shouldn't use just, I might make somebody mad, has 20,000 residents. So it's not possible, I think, to have a commissioner for every city. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I also wanted to say, in response to Commissioner Olmedo's comments last week, please don't leave. Please don't leave. You're such an asset to this commission. It would be such a loss to all of us. So if it's possible for you to stay, if your other obligations, your commitment to service is so admirable, I just would hate to see us lose you. So that's just a personal appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Jose Leon, followed by Gabe Escobedo.
Good evening, Mr. Leon. There we go. Mr. Leon, good evening. If you could unmute, sir, and begin your comment.
Commissioner Moore, should I say it in Spanish
Yes,
in
please.
case? Señor León, no sé si su lenguaje, oh, okay, just unmute. ¿Nos escucha?
Sí,
Ok, puede empezar.
ok. Les estoy llamando hoy para declararles que Lupe Álvarez es la mejor opción y también es la más clara. Necesitamos la representación de hispanos en la comisión. Háganle en caso a los votos y seleccionen a Lupe Álvarez. Muchas gracias.
Do you all want me to translate that or? Okay, yeah, he said that he believes that Lupe Alvarez is the best and most clear option to represent the Hispanic community and to listen to the votes of the people.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Leon.
The next speaker is Gabe Escobedo, followed by Jesus Morales.
Good evening, Mr. Escobedo.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. My name is Gabe Escobedo, and I'm a First District resident and proud Latino. I would like to state my strong support of appointing a Democrat for the vacancy on the Commission. When the county elections officials selected the pool of 45 applicants that this Commission is required to choose from, there was little to no consideration of the diversity of age, gender, or race or ethnicity. As a result, this pool was not diverse. Only 13% of the applicants that made the cut were Latino, despite having 46% of the county identifies Latino. Of those that identify as Latino, 55% are registered Democrats. Compare that to the 15% that are registered Republicans. Appointing a Republican would not represent the values of Latinos in our county. Conservatives, I believe, are cynically using racial identity to stack the deck in their favor, and I implore you to see through it. Please appoint a registered Democrat for the vacancy on the Commission. I appreciate this Commission and the time that they're putting in for this very important task, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Pardon me. The next is Jose Morales, followed by Gerardo Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mr. Morales. Can you unmute, sir?
Señor Morales, ¿nos puede escuchar? No sé si su lenguaje natal es el español.
Yes, sir.
Sí, sí, ya lo puedo escuchar.
Sí, puede empezar. Bienvenido.
Pues, hablé la semana pasada y vuelvo a hablar hoy porque para mí es muy importante que se escuche las voces de los pueblitos alrededor del condado. Lamentablemente hay numerosas ciudades en el condado que se pasan por alto continuamente. Y una de las comunidades es Guadalupe. Y yo creo que Lupe, el ex alcalde de Guadalupe, será tendrá una buena perspectiva diferente para la comisión. Y es todo. Gracias.
Gracias, señor Morales. He said that, he came last week, so I think he was the speaker. He said that he just wants to bring to light the concerns of the small towns, and he believes that that Lupe is the best option as an ex-mayor of Guadalupe, and he just wants to voice his support.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Gerardo Gonzalez, followed by Cliff Solomon.
Mr. Gonzalez, good evening.
Bueno, ¿me escuchan?
Sí.
Gracias. Pues con el retraso de los datos del censo y la comisión con una ventana abreviada para tomar decisiones sobre el trazado de líneas y la adopción de nuevos mapas, la experiencia con el gobierno de la ciudad y el proceso de tomar decisiones, así como el conocimiento del condado, deben valorarse mucho. Lupe Álvarez tiene esa experiencia y es conocimiento y ojalá que los cojan ustedes para ser parte de la comisión. Gracias.
Gracias, señor Gerardo. He said that with considering what's needed, the understanding of the county and understanding of the maps, he hopes that we will choose someone who is already knowledgeable and that he believes Lupe is equipped to do that as ex-mayor of Guadalupe, and he hopes that we pick Lupe.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Cliff Solomon, followed by Lata Murti.
Good evening, Mr. Solomon.
Unmute. Okay, I've unmuted, and I'm assuming that now is the time that when we can speak for our support of the people who are going to be added to the commission.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would like to give my support for Dr. Kate Adams to be added to the Redistricting Commission to the at-large position. I understand that there has been a turnover of commission members, and I believe that Kate is an excellent choice to fill the vacant seat. I have known Kate for several years. She is an intelligent, honest person who also works well within a group. Her experience as an English faculty member at Hancock has given her experience in consensus building in various college committees. Personally, I know her from her work with Showing Up for Racial Justice. I trust her judgment as we work to establish our social justice group in Santa Maria. I admire her wit and her perceptive temperament. Additionally, in order to ensure a proper balance on the commission, the candidate chosen should be a Democrat. Kate is the candidate who can provide this balance. Again, my name is Cliff Solomon. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Lata Murti, followed by Wally.
There we go. Good evening, Dr. Murti.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now?
We can, ma'am. Yes. Welcome.
Okay, great. I was kicked out for a moment, I think, and had to rejoin. Good evening, commissioners. Always great to address you as a member of the public. And I also want to voice my support for filling the vacant position with someone who affiliates with the Democratic Party. I think that is essential. However, I will refrain from giving my support of any specific candidate until after the interviews today. But I would also like to speak a little bit based on my short time on the commission. I wish it could have been longer, but during my time on the commission, I was often impressed, Commissioner Olmedo, by the insights that you had, the points that you made, the research that you did on your own, and brought into our discussions. I still remember much of what you said during that time. And if you were to leave the commission, I think it would be a great loss to the commission. And so I do hope that you will stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murdy.
And the next speaker is Wally, followed by Ian Bach.
Do we have Wally? I don't see him on the screen. Perhaps he got dropped on the transition. Oh, there we go. Good evening, Wally. If you could unmute and begin your comment, please.
All right. Given that 47% of the registered voters are Democrats in the county and 25% are Republicans, with the commission already at 27% on Republicans and likewise Democrats, it would seem to be for the meet the will of the voters that you should get at least one more Democrat there. Democrats in the county outnumber the Republicans 2-1. Right now, they're even on the commission. So you probably hear that again and again and again, but there's one. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And the last hand I see raised is for Ian Bach. Oh, and there's a Kathy Howard just raised her hand.
Good evening, Mr. Bach.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair Morris. Good evening, Chair and members of the commission. I just want to call in. My name is Ian Bauke and echo the comments of Mr. Escobedo, Wally Waldow, and Ms. Heller, as well as others, in urging you to select a Democrat to fill the vacancy. As you all know, this commission has an obligation to be representative of the community. And as others have stated before, it is not the case that the commission's current partisan makeup is reflective of the county, and it would be even worsened if a registered Republican was selected. As you all know, in December, the Santa Barbara Republican Central Committee threatened to sue you in order to force you to appoint more Republican commissioners, and Andy Caldwell's group CoLab is currently suing this commission on the basis of many alleged falsehoods. Conservative activists have taken every possible opportunity they could to politicize this process, force the commission to conform to their will. It's no surprise we've heard them advocating over the last few weeks for their preferred candidate, who happens to be a Republican and a former elected official. You do not need to take advice from people who are not invested in your success. As you've seen from this point, we haven't been trying, I feel like many Democrats have been supporting this process and the idea of an independent redistricting commission in general on principle, because we think it's the right thing to do. We've not been trying to manipulate the process to conform to a certain result, but we do believe that you have an obligation to be representative of this community in the way it votes, which is almost 2-1 Democrat. And I think that's something important to acknowledge. These voices, out there that you've heard from repeatedly, I don't think are looking for your best interests for the commission, and they are not interested in you being fair, impartial, or independent. I think that we should recognize once again the demographics of this community and the obligations of this commission to be representative of this community. So thank you all so much for your public service. I really do appreciate it, but I strongly urge you to appoint a Democrat, and ideally a Hispanic Democrat, to this vacancy to reflect the community you serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Kathy Howard, followed by Terry Doubtney.
Good evening, Ms. Howard.
Here I can unmute. I almost feel like the speaker just before me said everything I'm going to say, so we could put ditto marks around it. But his point is that the commission is supposed to represent the area that it is supposed to represent, and it doesn't right now. The majority of the voters are Democrats, and the commission isn't reflective of that. So political partisan partiality is a cornerstone of it. please appoint a Democrat so that you reflect the population of the area you're supposed to represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Terry Downey, followed by Andy Caldwell.
Good evening, Ms. Downey.
Hello, I agree with the others that have spoken. The commission should represent the electorate, and we are a majority Democratic community. I think that the position should be filled by a Democrat. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Andy Caldwell, and then there's one more hand raised, Jesus Ramirez, after Andy Caldwell.
Mr. Caldwell, good evening.
Hello, thank you. I wasn't planning on speaking, but this is probably the third or fourth time CoLab has been misrepresented. For those of you that were there at the beginning, we didn't show up during the candidate interviews because we trusted that the best people would rise to the top. And we're not, even though I am a conservative, our organization is nonpartisan. So you go back on the records, we didn't show up. We didn't recruit people to be on there. We didn't lobby you for who you would pick. Although I do, after your commission got established and there were vacancies, we did push for Lupe Alvarez because Guadalupe, it personally is near and dear to my heart. Having said that, we did sue and we are suing the commission, but it's not over Latino or Democrat or Republican composition. It's over the choice of legal counsel, because we believe the other legal counsel came in under $100,000 under Wucher's firm, and that they had done redistricting in at least 2 or 3 of the cities in our county. And we just felt that they were better qualified and they were $100,000 less. And plus, it was Phil Seymour representing the Democratic Party that put the push on you guys to hire Wucher. And so they were not apolitical in any of this. And again, we did not sue over the composition of this commission. We've sued over the legal representation because we felt that they were clearly disqualified by the actual language in there as far as who could be on the commission and who could serve as a consultant to the commission, and that's it. CoLab does not give money to candidates. We don't endorse candidates, and we have a 30-year record to that effect in this region. And in fact, we have members of all parties, and including organized labor. I've had every organized labor union on my board over the last 30 years. And every one of them is Democrat oriented. So we want you to succeed. We want you to stay independent, politically independent. That's why the ordinance says there shall be no quotas. There are no strict quotas. And so we trust you to make the right decision and pick the right person regardless of party affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And Chair Morris, I have one more hand speak, but I do have a request from the public asking if there will be opportunity to speak after we've completed the interview. So there's a request for that clarification.
The answer to that will be yes.
Okay, thank you. And the next speaker is, and this is the last hand raised, and then as the chair has just stated, there will be opportunity after we complete the interviews. The last hand raised is Jesus Ramirez.
Good evening, Mr. Ramirez. If you could unmute, sir.
Buenas tardes, señor Ramírez. ¿Puede empezar a hablar? No sé si entiende el español. O, hágame saber si me puede escuchar. Maybe for now you all switch to the English channel
Yeah.
while he figures it out.
Carlos, could you,
So to do that,
could
click-
you see, ask Mr. Ramirez to unmute and begin his comment? Okay, well, let's.
I believe Carlos is on the English channel translating.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So let's move on. If Mr. Ramirez is available, perhaps he could speak. Assuming he wanted to speak on the appointment, he could do so after that item again. Dr. Phillips, if you could clear him from the group, from the panelist side, we'll move on. Ms. Tilton, was there any written communication that we should read into the record at this point?
Yes. On May 16th, we received a letter from Ariston Julian from the mayor, who is the mayor of Guadalupe, supporting Lupe Alvarez for the vacancy. On May 17th, received a letter from Nadia Lee Abushanab in support of Catherine Adams. On May 18th, we received a letter from Charles Bell representing the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce supporting Alvarez to fill the vacancy. And on May 18th, we received a letter from Lorraine Waldow from the Lompoc Valley Democratic Group, urging commissions to reflect the political balance in the commission. And that is all.
Very good. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our May 5th meeting. Did we also have the minutes for the May 12th, or are they not in they're not in this packet, right?
Not in this packet.
Okay, so we'll do those next time. So the May 5th meeting minutes are in the packet. Commissioners, are there any corrections or changes to the minutes that need to be recorded? And if not, I would take a motion to accept those minutes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Commissioner Rios makes the motion. Commissioner Bradley, can I take you as the second?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Ms. Tilton.
First District Commissioner Trotsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Twibell,
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock,
Aye.
Vice Chair Turley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bray,
Aye.
Commissioner Rios,
Aye.
Chair Morris.
Aye. So the minutes are recorded, and we will move to item number 6, which is the applicant interviews. I would remind those in the audience that the commission conducted 3 interviews 1 week ago relative to this appointment. The candidates being Gerald DeWitt, Lupe Alvarez, and Michael Hartman. We also, the commission also reviewed the prior interview for candidate Kevin Elak as part of our deliberations on this item. And this evening we will have one additional interview, and that will be with Ms. Catherine Adams. On the agenda, there is a notation that we would also be interviewing, let me make sure I get the name correct, Mr. Kevin Kasif, but he has communicated with staff that he is not available or a candidate at this point for appointment. So with that, if we could invite Ms. Adams to join the panelist side of the Zoom meeting. And commissioners, as we go through the questions, I'm going to hope you remember the one you did last week, because we're going to ask the same folks to pose the same question. So, Ms. Adams, good evening.
Good evening.
Excellent. Your camera's working and your microphone's working. You're batting better than many of us today, I think. So welcome. Would you take just a moment and introduce yourself to the commissioners? And then we have 5 questions that we will be posing to you. They're the same we've done with all candidates for the commission to date. And we'll start at that. I believe Commissioner Bray, you had the first. So after Ms. Adams introduces herself, if you would begin with question number 1.
So this isn't my first Zoom rodeo. As an educator, I've spent a fair bit of time staring at the screens like this, sometimes being able to see the faces of my students, sometimes not. And like all of you, I hope for better knowledge and facility with these tools, since they're not going away, I don't think, anytime soon. My name is Kate Adams, although Catherine is on my birth certificate. You can call me Kate. As do most people who know me. I'm a 25-year resident of Santa Maria and a lifetime resident of California, born here in the Bay Area, spent about 10 years away based on my career and my education in Austin, Texas, and in Northern Arizona. I came here to take a job at a moment when I knew nothing about Santa Maria except it existed. It had 6 exits on the 101. It is the second smallest community when I came here that I'd ever lived in. And I learned a good deal from my students and from the people that surround me here in northern Santa Barbara County about the value of staying in place. Even though I have moved around a fair bit and I have grown up in a California that didn't include relatives, or generations of relatives there in the Midwest or there in another country. I've learned a lot about the value of staying put and the ways in which staying put can shape your understanding of other people's choices, other people's communities, other people's networks of care. I think it was mentioned by someone in public comment that I'm an English professor at Allen Hancock College, and that indeed is true. And I brought a visual aid tonight to respond to your first question, but maybe you want to get started with your questions now.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, and welcome. Very first question to get us started off tonight is, why do you want to serve on the Redistricting Commission?
So I already admitted that I'm an English professor, which is tantamount to admitting that I am a reader. Don't ever ask me, what's your favorite book? Because it will just make my brain stall. There is no answer to the question, what is your favorite book? And I have a large library, some of which you can see behind me. And it's fun to go through old books and find the paper ephemera that you used at various points to mark your place in books you haven't picked up for a while, like this one. I found that it's from 1998, 2 years after I came to Santa Maria and started being a voter in Santa Barbara County, in a book, I think yesterday. So I thought it was a good touchstone for my meeting. Why do I want to be a member of the commission? Because I vote, because voting matters, because we just came through an election where more Americans voted than in any other time in history. Voting matters, and voting is intimately associated with the census, with redistricting, and here in California, with an idea that I think has great value, which is let's let citizens serve as redistricting commissioners and represent other citizens in the shaping of districts. It's come to my attention that democracy is not a spectator sport, and that we all should, that's my sort of bumper sticker version of it, and that we all should, I think, practice civic engagement much more than we do. My interest in the committee is, or in the commission, is predated by my interest in the California Redistricting Commission, which I applied for as well. And then I was encouraged to try again at the Santa Barbara County level, which I did. I was one of the 45 original, list. Right? I also appreciate the opportunity, even though the opportunity is daunting. It requires a great deal of learning, teaching, and outreach. And all of you should be commended for saying yes. I know that there have been some hiccups in the production of this, this commission, in making it stable in terms of its makeup. I know that we've had, I think, 3 people who had to remove themselves from being commissioners. And I know too that there was controversy around the first 45 because I read about it in the newspapers. But mostly willingness and the belief that democracy is not a spectator sport. And I owe my communities more of my attention and my skills and knowledge than perhaps in the past I have given. So that's why I threw my hat into the ring.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I believe it is me next. So my question for you is, given the commission's seated members and what you know about their backgrounds and skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal backgrounds and skills and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
So first I want to say that I trust that the already seated commissioners are serving for similar reasons that I have for wanting to serve, that you seek to serve and that you believe that democracy is not a spectator sport. So the most important attribute I think that I have and that you have is that willingness to serve, which means showing up, biting off a rather significant project of teaching and learning for yourself, as well as outreach to others, right? Our service on a commission requires us to listen and learn from communities and from individuals that aren't on the commission. So that's the most important attribute I think you have and that I have, a willingness to serve. Beyond that, knowledge and skill sets differ. And quite frankly, I don't know a lot about the knowledge banks and skills sets that you all have as a working group, having only seen or watched live or on video a few of the meetings that you've had in the last few months. I know that the commission has faced struggles, sort of, ramping up and getting started. Some of those struggles exist right here in Zoom. I mean, Zoom is a struggle, right? As I just watched, a struggle with public comment, a struggle with channels for language translation, etc. So things move slower than any of us probably want in a world where we are all invited to move faster. So I think patience is actually another one of those skills, and a willingness to collaborate that all of you and new commissioners must share together. Speaking about my skill set, my skill set includes the wisdom and tools of a long career in teaching and learning, in a long career in examining language, in a long career of learning to listen to others' language and learning to use language myself. I think that the work of this commission that my skill set might serve is teaching, yes, particularly in that outreach part of our work, but learning and unlearning, maybe even more importantly. We all come to work with fellow citizens or in any kind of group with a set of ideas, biases, agendas, judgments, etc. So I think unlearning is as important as learning. as we move forward, learning about each other's skill sets and our ability to work together. I think probably if I had to boil it down to one word, my skill set includes analysis, the ability to analyze stuff. And analysis I define as the breaking into parts of complicated wholes, which redistricting fits. This is a complicated whole that must be broken down into parts before you can understand the whole and then change the whole in effective future-centric ways, which is sort of a definition of what redistricting every 10 years is all about.
Thank you and welcome, Catherine. The third question.
Thank you.
Kate, I should say. How would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
So there's a lot of rules that govern our ability to draw lines of community interest, right? You know, some of them start with C, compact, contiguous. Some of them start with P. And some of the rules say don't do certain kinds of things, right? So I actually think that a lot of the communities of interest piece of our work is laid out very explicitly, very explicitly in the directions, or as we used to remind my father, when all else fails, read the directions, particularly if you're like trying to put together a bicycle or something like that. But beyond that, communities of interest is a really important part of the listening and learning that I think maybe you'll ask me more about in question 5. And if you don't, you know, I think I'd like to leave it there until we get to that question, if that's all right with you, Commissioner Trotsky.
Thank you.
Good evening. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? When you disagreed with others, how did you handle the disagreement?
So I can think of a number of them. I've been a public employee of the English department of Allen Hancock College for 25 years, and I've served on many hiring committees there. I've also served on hiring committees to hire professionals in nonprofits that I've been involved in as a board member. And I've also had to make decisions, again, in a committee about funding, right? Grant making of various kinds. And in all of those cases, the two things I try to remember is first, ask questions, right? We all come sort of loaded for bear with a set of assumptions or biases or ideas about what we are all participating in, or what someone, either a member of the committee or someone we're thinking about hiring, a group we're thinking about making a grant to. We come with a lot of assumptions about who they are, what they want, how they will perform if we hire or if we grant. And the best way, you know, I know about breaking down some of those assumptions is the one that Big Bird shared on Sesame Street, which is asking questions is a good way to find out about stuff. And so I start with that. And then another thing that I try to remember, and being a human being, I'm not always good at this, but I bring my best self, right? The ways in which the most powerful way I know to break down difficulties or disagreements in high impact committee decisions is to bring my best self, which means to listen with empathy, to ask questions with curiosity, and to remember that my mind is not always on my side, right? My mind is sometimes full of judgments, older ideas that keep me from listening. And so I try to sort of place myself to the side a little bit with empathy while I listen to others. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Adams. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
How do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? What are some ideas you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'll make a joke first, which is learn Zoom, like learn Zoom and maybe, I don't know, buy a new modem and power up your wireless download speeds or something like that. But that's only for the meetings. I recognize that outreach is a much, much bigger and a much more complicated beast. I would start by saying engage young people. Young people know how to do stuff. I mean, I know I just made the Zoom joke. I'm going to follow it with a boomer joke. Young people know how to engage avenues of listening and learning that we don't necessarily know about. And I would say that that engaging already committed young Republicans and young Democrats, in other words, people who are already interested in this process, to each one teach one, each one bring one, each one share with one other person in their network something that's happening, a way for people to get involved is a really good idea. Engage young people. The next idea kind of stole from the League of Women Voters in New York, relationship building, right? It's important for me, if I am a commissioner, to understand that the relationships that I have already are partial and that I need to be willing to be uncomfortable enough to learn. Learning is very often uncomfortable. And comfortable enough to learn and step into spaces and places where I need to be tutored, I need to be taught, I need to be listened, or I need to listen and to ask questions. The League of Women Voters, in this one thing I saw online, and it's a New York City chapter, talked about asking permission first in order to establish trust with people that you might be meeting, communities that you might be meeting for the first time, to follow community leaders. And again, I don't know all the community leaders in my community and will need others to put me in touch with the ones that I don't know. That's part of my learning and part of the way in which I might make the work of the commission more outreach friendly to more communities beyond us, right? Santa Barbara County is kind of a big thing, a complicated, animal with many moving parts. And we don't know all the parts that are moving out there. So I come with a certain kind of humility to relationship building and to engagement in a variety of ways. I want to remember to seek out the already existing networks that I am not part of. That seems to me to be a part of the work of a commissioner. I already said be uncomfortable, willing, learning and unlearning are an important part of civic engagement at this level, I believe. And part of that will be language. I am an English teacher, a monolingual user of English. And already in meetings of this committee, I have seen the struggles of people who speak Spanish, people who speak Mixteco, people who might be ASL users, and the ways in which I am going to, and this technology is going to have to lean in to their needs before I can understand what their needs are. So I think real, careful, considered, expensive, perhaps, I don't know, that's just an opinion, and complete leaning into the variety of language needs that people have in our community is an important part of this commission. I feel perfectly comfortable speaking to you in English and knowing that you're listening to me in English, but that leaves out a whole bunch of wisdom, a whole bunch of communities, a whole bunch of communities of interest from our conversation. So I need to encourage myself to be uncomfortable and willing to learn and unlearn. Languages also, not using English or using English as a second or third language also means that you, citizen, you, community member, are functioning inside a news desert very often, right? What is available to me as a casual reader of English, or as a good reader of English, casually, sampling the fire hose of information that can come at me in English, that's not the experience of lots of other folks. And so I need to be, in my teaching and in my civic work, I need to be aware that not everybody knows what I know or can access what I know simply or easily. And that's where the teaching and learning comes back in. I think that inviting folks to offer testimony in a variety of ways, to tell stories, I think offering ourselves in person at various, I can imagine an outreach session happening at a soccer field or at a softball field. I can imagine as some of us start to move out of the COVID house arrest that we've all been in, that might be an important part of making the commission's work visible. An earlier interviewee on May 12th said, and he's right, that the work of the commission is dry. And I think that it's our job to make it juicy, to make it moist, to make it not just palatable, but tasty. And I think that a certain kind of respect for others, relationship building, the humble request or the humble invitation of us to others, particularly young people who have skill sets and networks for news making and news delivery that we might not have. I think all of those activities are part of how I imagine outreach, which is outreach and education, which is essential, right? If I want to have any small part in making democracy less a spectator sport and more a kind of basic civic engagement requirement. I think my time here is done.
Well, Ms. Adams, thank you very much. We appreciate your interest in serving on the commission and your answers this evening. I think this has been very enlightening. For your benefit, as well as for the other candidates and the general public, the way this is going to move next, we're gonna move you back over into the audience seats for a moment, and we're then going to open it up for some public public comment. If folks feel inclined to give us some advice on this, and then we'll bring it back to the commission for a discussion and a potential decision here. So, Ms. Tilton, anybody want to give us some advice tonight?
Yes, we do have some hands raised, and I want to ask the commissioners to make sure you're on the English channel. So if you look at the bottom tools on your screen, make sure you click to English under the interpretation button. And then that way our interpreter will be able to translate. So the first speaker we have is Jesus Ramirez.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I apologize. This computer is not, it's been acting up, so I apologize so much. I would like to, I'm a resident of Guadalupe. I've been here pretty much my whole life. I'm 65 years old. I'd like to support Kate for commissioner position. And like I had mentioned at one time, I am a local leader, community leader in Guadalupe, have been for like the last 30, 40 years. I know a lot of the parents and children and most of the folks in Guadalupe, a lot of them are bilingual. I am a bilingual person. I know Lupe Alvarez also is a bilingual person. I do not support him. Like I say, I support Kate. As I said one time before, Lupe is a landlord, developer in Guadalupe. I don't believe he will is best suited in this position. I do not see him as a community person who does the outreach within the community. So that's why I'm supporting Kate, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Our next speaker is calling in by phone with the last 4 digits 0723.
Good evening. If you could state your name and begin your comments, you'll need to unmute.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Kira Solis. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm commenting on behalf of the Planned Parenthood Central Coast Action Fund. And I'm commenting in favor of Dr. Kate Adams, who, as a 25-year educator at Ellen Hancock, which is also a minority-serving institution, you know, her work with SURGE shows a commitment to all of the people of the county. And like others have said, the majority of Latinx people in the county are Democrats. And based on her interview, I believe that she can represent the values of our community, which is majority Democratic. We appreciate your time and service. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is LaWanda Lyons Pruitt, followed by Kathy Sharoom.
Good evening, Ms. Lyons Pruitt. How are you this evening?
Good afternoon. Well, good evening. It's not afternoon, good evening. I've been on Zoom all day. LaWanda Lyons Pruitt, representing the Santa Maria Lompoc branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. You know us as NAACP, NAACP. I just want to reiterate my comments from last week. The Latinx Republicans in the county are 15%. And so appointing a Republican would hardly function as true representation of the Latinx population. And I still feel that people of color do not simply want someone to represent them based upon racial status, as if all people of color and even all Latinx people view the world the same way and can speak adequately on behalf of others from their demographic group. People of color are diverse, and like white people, they hold views and have values and want to see those reflected in the makeup of their commission. So appointing someone who is Republican and Latinx to replace a Democrat would not truly reflect the views of the overwhelming majority of people of color who either registered Democrat or no party preference. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your decision.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Kathy Sharoom, followed by Lata Murthy.
Good evening, Ms. Sharoom.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I want to voice my support for Dr. Kate Adams. I've known Kate for several years now, and I think her tenure with Ellen Hancock, her length of stay in Santa Maria, and knowing the amount of personal involvement she's invested in all of the communities living in Santa Maria make her exceptionally qualified. I think her interview itself speaks volumes more or better than I can, but I think she'll be fair, objective, and open to all points of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Lata Murthy, followed by Rebecca Garcia.
Welcome back, Dr. Murthy.
Thank you, Commissioners. I too would like to express my support of Kate Adams. I appreciate the experience and the perspective she brings as both a longtime resident of this area and a professor of English at Hancock. But what I really appreciate from her interview is her emphasis on relationship building and doing so with humility and learning from others, which to me is what this commission and its work is all about. And it was really delightful for me really to hear her talk about that. And I think that would be an asset to this commission. And I hope she'll be appointed to the vacancy. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Rebecca Garcia, followed by Lee Heller.
Evening, Ms. Garcia.
Hello, commissioners. Good evening. My name is Rebecca. I've spoken before on behalf of CAUSE, Central Coast Alliance United for Sustainable Economy. Tonight, I would like to show my support and recommendation for Dr. Kate Adams. I think just from listening to her interview, it is just so obvious how much wisdom she carries with herself as an educator and someone who has worked with Latino students in a Latino community. We really have, we see how much dedication she has to listening, to building relationships already within our community in Santa Maria. And I think, as many people have said before, it's so important that there remain a balance between party preference and being a Democrat. I think she will represent Latinos and working class immigrant families more accurately and with, I think, humble ears. So yeah, I hope that you will move forward with her. Thank you so much for your time.
And the last hand I see raised is Lee Heller.
First and last tonight, Ms. Heller.
Sorry about that. The unmute button is mobile at this moment. It keeps changing its place on my screen. So Chair Morris and commissioners, I'm going to start with something Dr. Adams said, which is read the instructions. And unlike Andy Caldwell, I am a lawyer. And I'm going to refer you back to the instructions about who you need to pick. And despite his claim to the contrary, in fact, the language of the ordinance says the 5 commissioners shall also consider party preference, so that's mandatory. And I'm not going to reread the whole thing, but I'll also remind you of the replacement requirement that the commission continue the political parity. So I am neither a Republican or a Democrat, but I am a lawyer. And so I am encouraging you to do what I wanted you to do in December that you did not do, which is to follow the ordinance and have the commission reflect the partisan registrations of the county. So that's just a framework to remind you of that. The other thing I'm going to say is I am also a PhD in English and a doctor as well, although I have not required that you call me by that title. But Dr. Adams has a skill set that we get when we become PhDs in literature and we teach writing, which is critical thinking and analysis, because that's what you do as an English professor. You teach people how to think critically, you teach people how to examine their prejudices and presuppositions, and you teach them to rigorously interrogate the evidence to come to the best conclusion. So I think she would bring that as a real asset to this commission. As far as I'm concerned, you have to appoint a Democrat. Mr. Hartman had some impressive qualities as well. My concern about Mr. DeWitt is that he walked into his interview expressing an opinion about where a specific community of interest should go. And you are supposed to be independent commissioners, not commissioners walking in the door with a set of presuppositions about how things should be done. So on that basis, I'm afraid to say that I think he is disqualified. And I won't speak to Mr. Alvarez because from a legal perspective, I believe you have to appoint a Democrat.
Well, Dr. Heller, thank you.
The next speaker is Joe Pierre, followed by Spencer Brandt.
Mr. Pierre, welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, Chair Morris and commissioners. I want to reiterate what most of the other people have said this evening. we have, a requirement. The way I read the ordinance is there's a requirement that the commission reflects the diversity in the community, and that is 40%, 47% Democrat. There should be 5.1 Democrats on the commission, and unfortunately, there are only 3 right now. So filling this vacancy with a Democrat would get us somewhat closer to the proper balance. Not all the way there, and we'll be keeping an eye on future vacancies, but I urge you to fill the seat with a registered Democrat. I was impressed with the 2 interviews of the 2 Democrats last week, Gerald DeWitt and Michael Hartman, but really impressed with Dr. Adams' interview tonight. And I urge you to vote Dr. Adams on the commission. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Spencer Brandt, followed by Essencia Decasas.
Mr. Brandt, good evening.
Hi, Commissioner Morris. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Well, thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm Spencer Brandt from the 3rd District. And I really just wanted to highlight some of the things that I saw in Kate Adams' interview right now that make me very supportive of her. I've really appreciated what she had to say about communities of interest, because I think it was really prescient. What she said was that when it comes to communities of interest, as you've heard from your presentations, you've got a lot of different things that you have to follow, and a lot of the template for what communities of interest are is spelled out in the law. But what it really comes down to is, how do we make sure that we're doing the outreach to talk to every single person that we can, to try to weigh these different factors and come up with something that represents the community really well. And I think her background as an educator by nature, being such a good communicator in that way, is really going to be something that's a big asset for this commission. So I definitely think that you should support her for the vacancy. I was somewhat impressed with some of the other interviewees, but I seem to think that the 2 interviewees that were our former elected officials at the municipal level, I think that that's kind of disqualifying. When you're at the municipal level, it seems like they're really, really close to the county supervisors. And Mr. Alvarez in particular spoke about his experience serving on LAFCO and SBCAG. And both of these are bodies where he served as colleagues with supervisors. I don't think that that's the kind of closeness that you're looking for on this independent body. So thank you all for your service. I know this has been tough with the resignations and everything, but I also want to really encourage Commissioner Olmedo to stay, because I think you provide something that's so valuable to this commission and your skill set and your knowledge. So had to throw that in there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
And I see 2 more hands raised, Essencia Decasas and Sarah McDonald.
It's Yesenia, I think.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Yesenia. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Casas. How are you?
Hello, good evening to all the commissioners and public out there. First of all, as a resident of Santa Barbara County, I want to say thank you to all the commissioners for your service. It's a time commitment, a huge commitment, so thank you. And to those that are seeking positions. But I didn't want to miss this opportunity to express my support for Kate Adams as well. My name is Yesenia Decasas. I live in Santa Maria. I'm a union representative, and I consider myself a community leader. And after I heard Dr. Kate Adams speak, I just wanted to, without repeating everything that's said about her interview, I just think her answers reflect the exact criteria for somebody seeking this position, and I wanted to express my support. Her interview was impressive, and I feel that we need her insight and perspective as part of this process. And like the rest of you here, she would be a good addition to the process and to the group. So thank you and good evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the last hand I see raised is Sarah McDonald.
Good evening, Ms. McDonald.
Good evening, Chair Morris and commissioners. I'm Sarah MacDonald and I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice, and I'm here to support Dr. Kate Adams for a seat on the independent redistricting board. I believe that she makes the best candidate for this new appointment. She has a calmness and a thoughtfulness when I'm watching a person in an interview, especially in a box. I find that she has the skill set that we need with all the modern technology. She also has the knowledge of the community, which is very important. And I not only believe that she is the right candidate, I think you'd be foolish not to. So thank you very much. And I don't envy your decision. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Chair Morris, I see no more hands raised for public comment.
Very well, we'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to the commissioners. Anybody want to start us off? Commissioner Romero.
So I'll start out. So great interview, obviously very well qualified. You know, we have definitely difficult choices ahead. You know, I also think perspective is important. We talk about lived experience, you know, kind of how that colors your views and how you think about things. You know, Commissioner Holsey, younger man of color, you know, myself, younger man of color. You know, I think of Kevin Ilac, right? Younger man of color, also an educator, you know. And I also worry about proximity bias, you know. Great interview. She's also the most recent, right? When I think of Kevin, like way back in December, right? So I try to make it a point to watch the interviews, refresh, kind of understand, you know, and given, you know, the perspectives and everything, current composition of the commission and who we're looking to also reflect in terms of perspective and live experience. You know, when you look at Commissioner Holsey, potentially myself, which I'll bring a little more discussion, having to resign due to requirements of service. And we have a position, as I spoke last week, as far as representation broadly across districts in the county. You know, I think Kevin Ilac is the best candidate that we have here for that position in terms of experience, also in terms of lived experience and how we work with young people. You know, I'm kind of in a hard rock, between a hard rock and a hard place, you know, in terms of, you know, I really, you know, my preference would be to stay here and see this work towards the end. However, I am called to serve, you know, was part of my military service. This was not foreseen. There are some changes that happen in terms of structure and reassignment that I don't have a lot of control over. But, you know, when you make a commitment to serve, you serve where you're called. And so I also need to think, you know, the bigger picture as far as when is the best time if someone else is going to come in and be able to get spun up on the commission and do that. And I think that the time is pretty close. So I will be handing in reluctantly, you know, my resignation. You know, I have to put it probably, you know, out, you know, hard with the agenda, you know, and I just had drill. So a lot of this is kind of changing and evolving. I don't have exact dates, but I do know I will be called and mobilized. In the meantime, I'll do my best I can on the commission, and, you know, barring that, I'll try to give the best recommendations, you know, without judgment. And so from the big scope, taking a broad organic perspective as far as what we need, who we need to replace, what I think is a perspective that would be important to have on the commission. You know, my vote would be for Kevin Ilac.
So before we move on, thank you, Ben, for sharing with that. And parent of one who served, I appreciate very much what you're going through, and you know, acknowledge that you have a prior commitment, right? That an obligation that was set in place some time back, and so we'll recognize that. Ms. Sheridan, Ms. Oden, could I ask you to join us for a moment?
Yes, I am here. I just need my picture back, perhaps, but I am here verbally.
Okay, you should be able to.
It says the host is asked. Oh, now the host is giving me a new information. Thank you so much.
There we go. So I want to pause for just a moment and get you some input from you about path forward. We currently have an opening on the commission. that was originally a District 3 seat appointee, to give us a broader pool of candidates. We asked Mr. Olmedo to slide over from the at-large to District 3. He's now in a position where he's finding himself needing to step aside sometime now or in the near future. What are our options this evening? I would point out for the benefit of the commission that by my read of the the 5 candidates before us, only one resides in the 3rd district. The others are in other districts. I don't have it notated, but I do know they don't live within the 3rd district. So, tonight, I think when we arrived this evening, we anticipated selecting someone to take the at-large seat. All 5 of these candidates would be eligible for that. With Mr. Ramirez, could we appoint someone in both seats this evening? Should we wait and do one or both seats at another meeting? What's your advice?
Well, my advice.
Try that not.
I first want to say I got to share what I think everybody feels, that obviously Commissioner Olmedo is doing the very right thing by listening to his primary call to duty. But it is very unfortunate, and I know everyone wishes he could stay longer. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense, and this is not a legal decision. This part of it is not legal. Makes a lot of sense to make it earlier rather than later because of all of the serious work that's ahead of us in terms of the outreach and in terms of decision making. So I think in my view, if it's shared by the commissioners, sooner rather than later. Because of the requirements of the Brown Act, everyone, the commissioners included, were prepared to make a single decision for the vacancy of a single commissioner. And we've heard in public comment, all of our public that came to talk to us felt the same way. So we can't fill 2 vacancies today, even if he resigned this moment and we went forward. I was also impressed by Commissioner Olmedo's thought about timing and in the sense of the biases we sometimes have by the first person we've heard from or the last person we've heard from. So we can't choose anyone, but I think it's very fortunate that we know about it, and we know that we will, you will have as a commission, the duty to choose another person very promptly.
Thank you. Okay, so let's do this. So let's set us. Well, let me ask Ms. Tilton to join us again for just a moment, and I'm going to put her on the spot a little bit from a records perspective. Ms. Tilton, do you happen to have the original pool of candidates in front of you, specifically for District 3?
Yeah, I don't have it brought up
Is that something
at the moment.
Is that something you could grab quickly? Here's my question. We have one candidate that we've interviewed in this cycle from District 3. If I remember correctly, what we had asked you to do was to poll the quick candidates in all districts who were either Democrat or Hispanic for this opportunity. We ended up with one out of that subpool who also is in District 3. Are there other candidates that you have that we have not interviewed in the past for an appointment that live in District 3 that we could consider in the future? Does that make any sense?
I can tell you we have interviewed all the Democrats that are available and willing to serve. I know that for certain in District 3.
Okay.
And on the interview schedule, it shows which districts they are. I know Doug just activated his screen. He may be able to find that master list more expediently than I can at this point.
Welcome back, Mr. Johnson.
Hello,
Anyone you want to add?
Thank you. I was just going to clarify that Aaron Freed and Kevin Cassif are Democrats from District 3, but they both declined to be interviewed. So, and they and resigned Commissioner Hudley are the only Democrats from District 3. The only NPP from District 3 in the pool are Commissioner Olmedo and Commissioner Bradley. So unless unless Aaron Freed or Kevin Cassif are willing to reconsider, you only have Republicans in District 3. You have Lupe Alvarez and then 2 white Republicans and then Albert Byerly, who listed as declined to state, but we assume is white. We're between Mr. Hudley's being called by employment duties and Mr. Olmedo being called by duty to country. District 3 is being wiped out, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Aaron Freed is moving out of state.
So did Mr. Case, when he communicated his unavailability tonight, was, if you can share, was it a scheduling issue or was it a willingness or an interest issue?
It's my recollection it was a scheduling issue and prior commitments.
Okay, very well. So we could potentially, we could reach back out to him and see if he would be available for a future meeting. Is that your assumption?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very well. Okay. Sorry, folks, we went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I thought it was useful for the commissioners to kind of understand the lay of the land in terms of sorting out, the choice before us tonight versus what we now anticipate to be one more choice that will be coming potentially at our next meeting. So all of that said, now let me open it to the commissioners and see if anybody is ready to make a recommendation on an appointment this evening, which as published would be for the at-large position. Mr. Bradley.
I would like to, first of all, recommend that we do reapproach any candidates that are still in that eligible pool with some renewed urgency to see if they would reconsider. That being said, as far as our at-large position is concerned, I found Dr. Adams to be an extraordinarily engaged, energetic candidate. I was frankly very, very amazed at her qualifications. However, I agree entirely with Commissioner Olmedo that Kevin Elak has stayed in the forefront of my mind for months now. I think he is an extraordinary candidate. I would be willing to support either of those two.
Very well. Ms. Turley.
Yeah, I would just like to echo what Commissioner Bradley said. I think that both Kevin Elak and Dr. Adams are fantastic candidates, and we would be lucky to have either one. And I'm trying to keep in mind during this process, so I'll share with you that I'm trying to remember that I'm evaluating our possible commissioners on the ideas of impartiality. Are they going to be fair to their districts? I think each commissioner has a responsibility to represent all the people in their district, regardless of their party preference or their race. And now that we have this new complication of the 3rd district, I think it's even more important to consider where and if we can have commissioners who are more racially representative of our county. So I am leaning towards Kevin Elak, but I think that both Dr. Adams and Kevin Elak are excellent candidates.
Mr. Trusky.
I'm a little confused as to the support for Kevin Elak, because that would give the no party preference and a huge advantage over the rest of the Democrats and Republicans on the commission. And the NPP only represents maybe 24% of the voters. So if this is about you know, proper representation, how can Kevin Elak even be considered? I mean, that would not be fair. To that point, I'm totally impressed with Lupe Alvarez. I think he's a qualified candidate. I think he has knowledge of the area that he's representing. I think he's representing a large swath of people that feel unrepresented. And I think his appointment would solve a lot of issues for people in North County that don't feel like they have a voice and feel like they are completely overshadowed by South County. And I think he meets the need for fair representation. I think he's demonstrated a commitment to this commission. I don't think we have to worry about him resigning. I know that he would give his, I just get the idea that he's passionate and that he would give his all to this commission. And I think based on the callers, he's the people that have called in are the people that are the hard to count population, the population that we're trying to reach. Those are the people that want him. I mean, he's got support from the mayor of Guadalupe. I just think the Hispanics represent 46% of our population, and he's from the 3rd district. I think for sure if the 3rd district becomes vacant, for sure he should be the candidate, hands down. For the at-large position, my preference would be for Mr. Alvarez or Mr. Hartman. I think Mr. Hartman brings a different voice to our commission. He's definitely representing a different faction of our community that's not represented on this board, on this commission. And I think that he would be representative of even more voices and would add a lot to this commission. So those would be my 2 choices.
Thank you. Commissioner Rios.
Thank you. Yes, I just, I was thinking about it deeply because I know there are 2 concerns here. How to make sure we are balancing out the commission between, the independents, the Democrats and the Republicans, and also considering the racial makeup of our county. And, Dr. Kate Adams and Kevin Elak do stick out to me personally. I actually had Kevin Elak for government in high school. So I just want to shout out to that. I don't know if he remembers me. But I definitely think that they both bring a skill set. They both work with young people. I mean, we talk about critical thinking, analysis, how to stay neutral on a committee where you are representing a large voice of people. And I think they can both speak to that group that we are trying to engage, young people. And I mean, both work with different sets of young people. You have your high school students, you have your college students. A college student, Alan Hancock, looks very different because, you have re-entry students, people with families, students straight out of high school, people from Vandenberg, travel to Santa Maria to take classes there. And so just acknowledging those target areas that we could reach. They're both educators, so I think we could reach a large audience with one of them. I think right now, personally, I am gravitating towards Kate Adams because of her work at the, at the community level. I do, I think a few public comments mentioned some of the organizations she is involved in. So I think, but again, I think both candidates would be great just because of those populations that we often struggle to reach.
Mr. Bray.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. This question really is for council because I'm kind of struggling with 2 issues here. One is the letter from Mr. Bell dated May 18th that cites the Voting Rights Act that says specifically you have to maintain racial, ethnic, gender, and geographical balance versus the Santa Barbara County ordinance that says you must fill the position with the Democratic Party that left the position. So I'm not sure which takes precedent here.
I think you should at this moment, be guided by your best understanding of your ordinance that is your guidance for this decision. There are interesting and some very novel issues about whether the Voting Rights Act is relevant to the choice of a person on this commission. But in my view, I think we have enough difficulty in determining our ordinance and making the best balance there. And that's where our focus should be. As Commissioner Rios has just said, it has many factors in it. It has the racial, ethnic, age diversity. It has the partisan balance as much as practical. We have different provisions in the vacancy portion and in the other portions. So I think what we ought to do here, and you ought to, as commissioners, do, is to focus on our best understanding of that ordinance and not try to reach out to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act or any other of the federal legislation.
Thank you. Helpful.
Mr. Twyfell.
I too am leaning toward Dr. Adams, but I'm also thinking about Michael Hartman because he's also an educator and he's in the age bracket that Chris Hudley was in. So it'd be like the same type of representation or that group of people that is not so represented on our commission right now. That's my opinion.
Mr. McClintock, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, sorry, my video and internet connection is not exactly stable, but I really was very impressed with Ms. Adams and loved what she had to say about learning, being aware of biases, asking questions, listening, establishing trust. I especially liked what she said about wanting to seek out rather than her existing networks that she's already a part of, networks that she's not a part of. And one of the things I was concerned about when Mr. Alvarez was speaking was his apparent commitment to a specific community, the community of Guadalupe. I like the idea of having another commissioner who has a broader interest in the county, listening to communities that are maybe she's not a part of. But obviously her interview was extremely good. She had thought a lot about our work and what needs to be done. I have strong conviction that she'd be a great member of our commission.
Mr. Bray.
Thank you, Chair Morris. I'm just going to weigh in. I like Mr. Elak's interview. I really appreciated his youth, his energy, particularly his background on working in government, his background in working in youth, and his compassion that he would bring to this. But I got to tell you, I was very impressed with Dr. Adams tonight. I've never met her, but I agree with Commissioner McClintock. I really liked her thinking on reaching out because I think that's so important. And also I kind of appreciated her humor. It's something I think we're going to need down the road.
Anybody ready to put us into a position to move forward by making a motion? Mr. Bradley?
I'd like to motion that we appoint Dr. Adams to the position of at-large commissioner.
I have a motion to appoint Dr. Adams. Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Rios, are you seconding that?
Yes, I second that motion.
Very well. Well, let's test it and see how we go. Ms. Tilton, can you help us with that?
Yes, Commissioner Trotsky.
I'm not ready to vote. Can you come back to me?
Yes, Commissioner Twibell.
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock.
Aye.
Commissioner Turley.
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley.
Aye.
Commissioner Bray.
Aye.
Commissioner Rios.
Aye.
Commissioner Trotsky.
Aye.
Chair Morris.
We'll make it unanimous. Aye.
Okay, unanimous to appoint Kate Adams.
Very well. So we need to take care of that now. If we can invite Ms. Adams back. Ms. Alexander, welcome back. Apologies again for yet another after hours engagement. And as you heard, fair warning, there'll be one more. So thank you for your service as the county clerk. Ms. Adams, if you are ready and prepared, Ms. Alexander is here to administer the oath of office, which would then commit you to spending the rest of the evening and many more after this as a member of the commission. Is that
Actually,
you prepared to do that tonight?
Chair Morris, before you go on, I just want to check one procedural thing. With Andrea, we didn't have Commissioner Almeida vote on that. Should we have him vote or?
Oh,
yes, we should.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
My apologies. I that was completely my.
I thought I already got the axe.
Not at all. Commissioner Armado.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks for calling that to my attention.
Now, Ms. Adams, are you prepared to move to accept that?
Sure. First, I want to thank the commission for your confidence. And I hope I live up to all that confidence. This will be my first Zoom swearing in. Do I need to know anything special?
Ms. Alexander, take it away.
Chair Morris and members of the commission, thank you for having me this evening. Dr. Catherine Adams, it's pretty painless, actually easier even on Zoom than it is in person. Thank you to the state of California for this period of time that they're allowing us to do this. And all I'm going to need from you, it appears you are standing, I can't tell, but if you could.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But I don't have jammies on, so I can stand if you desire me to.
I'll take your word for it. If you just could raise your right hand for me, and you're just going to repeat after me, and we will be on our way. Thank you. I, Dr. Catherine Adams, do solemnly swear.
I, Dr. Catherine Adams, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties upon which.
The duties upon which.
I am about to enter.
I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good luck with your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Commissioner Adams, welcome. You can see it's our on-the-spot staff have already changed your little logo or name at the bottom of the screen.
Wow. You've got some good Zoom handlers.
We do indeed. folks, I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute personal comfort break, and we will reconvene. I have 7:42. Let's make it 7:50. We'll reconvene the meeting. We'll be in recess until then.
Thank you.
And welcome back, everybody. We want to call our meeting back to order again. We are, by my count, on item number 8, an update on the work on our marketing materials. Dr. Johnson, are you starting us off on this, or who's leading our presentation? Is that you, Ms. Tilton?
Actually, we're having Vice Chair Turley going to be giving the presentation on behalf of the Outreach Committee.
Excellent.
Yes.
And Turley, take it away.
Thank you. As far as I'm aware, there's not a presentation aspect, so I won't be sharing my screen, but I did want to give you a quick update on what we have. Hopefully by next meeting, there will be finalized drafts of all of these items so that they can be reviewed by the full commission and the public. So we have almost finalized a video that is has animated slides and then a voiceover in English that should basically be talking about the basics of redistricting, as well as what the job of the commission and the public is. We also have a draft of a PowerPoint presentation that most likely we will be bringing out to the community during outreach events, and are very close to launching our social media channels, both on Facebook and Instagram, as well as a website. And then in addition to all of those things, which are coming up very soon, we are keeping in mind reaching out to community resources to create a second voiceover in Mixteco, as that's not a written language. The video will also have closed captioning, subtitles in other languages, but this in particular will be hopefully a voiceover. And then also investigating WhatsApp and WeChat groups, as well as exploring editorials in local news sources. So that is what the committee has been working on. And let me know if you have any questions.
And Vice Chair, I want to point out that by this Friday, each of the commissioners can expect to receive the draft of the content. And in that email, we'll be asking you to provide your feedback, anything that you see that needs to be changed or revised. And then we will be doing the full demonstration of the all of the content and the collateral at the next meeting.
Thank you, Shalise.
So Commissioner Turley, the PowerPoint presentation that you mentioned, you mentioned for the outreach meetings, but is that also something that you envision us carrying with us as we go to Lions clubs and League of Women Voters meetings and anywhere we get invited along the rubber chicken circuit?
Absolutely, yeah. So it goes through the whole process. It covers the Voting Rights Act. It covers how the lines will be drawn, as well as what the considerations are, things like contiguity, compactness, not gerrymandering, things like that. So that's all included, as well as information about how the public can reach out to us and provide public feedback.
That's great. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Turley and her subcommittee?
Can I know who is that subcommittee on outreach?
Yeah, Commissioner Turley, I believe it's you, Commissioner Bray, and Commissioner Rios. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And Ms. Tilton is our staff support on that.
And I would certainly not say no to another member joining the committee, especially if they have an English degree.
Well, let's see what you think after I've evaluated these materials coming to me on Friday.
There you are.
And Chair Morris, I also want to point out that at June 2nd, not only will we be demonstrating all of the PowerPoint and everything, we will also be doing some training on the proper terminology to use, what language to avoid when you're doing presentations, because that matters. So Dr. Johnson and myself will be assisting with that to help to make sure that we don't use terminology that has been construed by the courts to mean one thing, and when we're thinking it means something else. and making sure that we are hitting the points that are required by statutes and all of those good things when we're doing the presentation. So expect that at your January 2nd meeting as a bit of training on how to present the materials.
So are you telling us we can look forward to some role playing?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Appreciate everybody's work on that, and really excited to see the website in particular and some of the other materials. So thank you. We'll look forward to that at our meeting in a couple of weeks. Commissioner McClintock, you have been a patient man, and we are at item number 9 on the agenda this evening. We're going to have a discussion and demonstration of some public mapping tools. So are you ready, sir?
I'm delighted. Can't wait.
Excellent. Mr. Johnson, are you going to introduce this? And
Yes, definitely. And have some demos and a little video on one of the products too to show you. So this is, I think, when it starts to get fun. The subcommittee's been having fun designing the meaty stuff for going forward. And this is the other part of the meat of getting to go forward. So I have a PowerPoint with the different parts of this, and then from there, I'll jump into the software tools themselves. So let me share my screen here. Go back to the beginning, here we go. So as we go through these tools, there's a couple of kind of big picture ideas that we're trying to achieve through this group of tools. First of all, there are different tools for different purposes, which is why I'll show you a handful of different things. And also different tools for different levels of technical skill and interest and to be honest, access. Unfortunately, internet access is still a key concern as we look at different levels of access in the community. So most of the ones I'm going to show you are already planned for part of the project and included in the scope and pricing. The two big kind of powerful mapping tools at the end, however, are add-on projects. So we'll talk about the cost as I demonstrate those. And we wouldn't want to use both of them. So that's going to be the big decision that we'll come to at the end, is which of those two products you prefer and want to go forward with. So I'll talk more about that when we get to there. Of course, I do want to flag the one big technology thing we've already looked at, which is what I'm going to show you today is in addition to that community of interest storing map that Dr. Phillips presented the other day, that shows you, everything from city borders to watersheds and everything in between that people might look at in terms of data to find communities of interest. So keep that in mind. That's one of the tools that I'm not going to go through tonight, but still very much a part of the package here. So with that, I will jump in. First of all, what we use for every project of any size jurisdiction is a very simple map review tool. And note that at the top I bolded review. So this isn't a tool to make maps, it's just to review and analyze and comment on them. For those that are familiar with Esri or ESRI, it's their ArcGIS Online tool, which is very similar to Google Maps in terms of ease of use. There's no login, there's no sign up. Anyone with the link can go and see it. And so this is something we use to review, analyze, and compare maps. And we can also overlay all that story map data. So if someone's interested in, neighborhood associations, they can overlay the neighborhood association map onto this tool. So what I'm going to show you is a demo. Obviously, none of these are built for Santa Barbara yet. So I'm going to show you an example from Lake Forest. So I got to change how I'm sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, so as I click on this, it should bring it up. It takes a minute to load. There we go. So can you see the map on screen? Hopefully you can. So it always pops up. This little window of instructions is literally all that anyone would need to do everything in this tool. So it talks about in the top left or plus and minus to zoom in. You can change other things in here. I'll go ahead and jump in. And so over here on the right, you may have to move the zoom faces to see it, is the layers. And this is where all the different maps are. And so people can just click down through them to see each map. And you can actually click multiple maps, 2 maps, to see where they differ. So when the color gets dark, that means that district is the same in both maps. Where the colors are lighter, like down in here, you're seeing a difference where the border moves from one map to another. So it is a handy way of spotting where there are differences in the map, in 2 different maps, and what changes have been made from one map to another. And then Lake Forest had a lot of maps. So as we scroll down to the bottom, we'll get to the overlays. So we can turn on homeowner associations. And so Lake Forest has a lot of homeowner associations. You can see by the colors, each different homeowner association. As you zoom in, the names pop up. In this case, we had population units, which were geographic units. And we could either put the ID number or the total population or both on there. So it's a handy way of overlaying stuff. You can also change the underlying map. So you see this base map gallery up here. You can even put on satellite view. Or satellite with labels, topographical. If we're talking about an area up in the hills, topographical might be very useful, or just a simple streets. And then another one, open streets. This is a streets map, but Open Streets is a company that's trying to identify every business and government building in the country. And so as you zoom in, you can see like Ralph's is labeled and US Bank is labeled. So when people talk about, well, over by the Target, this neighborhood has this characteristic, you can easily figure out where they're talking about. So it's a very simple, easy to use tool. It has all kinds of data in it. But unfortunately, this simple tool is a review tool. It is not a mapping tool that you could use to draw a map. So this is the basic thing that's available to everyone. Every map that goes live will be posted in here. And anyone who's interested can come in here and use it to compare their maps. So that's the simplest one. Then the next step is the first of the mapping tools. And we start with the basics, just paper. Now, especially in a jurisdiction like a county, it's tough to capture much detail on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. 20 years ago, we used to come to these meetings and we bring rolls of large printouts and have them. But nowadays, what we found is 90+% of people are printing these off at home. And so they print them off 8.5 by 11. Even if we make them bigger, they still use it. But it still works. We still find it lets people share their thoughts. They might not get the perfect population balance, but they get close enough to share their thought and share their map with the commission. And so it's a simple map. We create these units of geography. You may see them in some jurisdictions where they just use block groups or tracks. We actually divide those up because block groups and tracks don't stop at the freeway and don't stop at city borders. So we make what are called population units that are essentially block groups, but that stop at major roads. And then the paper version, we make these black lines and then put the total population right on it. And the instructions are right here on the page. Part of the great part about community engagement and involving the public, we used to say people had to either scan it or fax it or mail it in until we were at a community forum. And someone said, can't I just take a picture of it with my phone? And, brilliant. It had never occurred to us. We've been using these, back to 1991. So back then phones weren't an option, but that's how just about everybody sends it in is by email from their phone. And in the case of Santa Barbara County, we would make this, as I note here, it'd be tracks in the rural areas. Each census designated place would be its own unit. The smaller cities would each be their own unit. And then within Santa Barbara and within Santa Maria, and maybe within Carpinteria, we'd have to look and see, we do individual tracks, whatever we could show on a map that someone could have at home. So this is, and of course, on a piece of paper, all we can give them is total population. There's no demographics. But what we find is people use the map I showed you a minute ago and that story map to look at where the different demographic groups are, and they draw their lines accordingly, even if they don't have the numbers. But if they want the numbers, but they still don't want to go online, we do have a similar version. The map looks nearly the same, except that instead of the population numbers, you get a unit ID number. And so if someone's familiar with Excel, and we always say, don't bother learning Excel for this, but more and more people are comfortable with Excel, but they still don't want to go online or they don't have reliable internet access. They can use that same map. We have an Excel sheet where you see the district column and they enter in what district number they're assigning each population unit by its ID number. And then Excel calculates all the math in a separate worksheet in the same file. And they just email in the file. So this actually lets people get demographic data without having to go online. It's less and less popular as the online tools spread and more people get better access, but still we do find some people that enjoy it. So that's kind of the basics. Anyone can use that without going online. The next step is District R, which is it was written, it's an online software tool that I'll show you in a moment. It was written with a focus on draw your neighborhood, draw your community of interest. It does have a draw a district feature to it, but it's definitely designed and optimized for just draw your small neighborhood. It is only available in English. These are programs written outside. We don't control that. We could do a how to use video or guide that would be in other languages, but the site itself is only in English. There are two other options for this. There's a similar organization called Representable, representable.org. And then you may have heard about the California Redistricting Commission. They wrote their own tool called drawmycacommunity.org. Similar purpose. And people are perfectly welcome to use those. They would just have to let us know that, or find a way to share that map with us, because we don't control the back end on those. So if they use those to draw their community, they would then have to send us that file somehow. But for District R, it's really easy. It's a paintbrush. And so let me zoom in here. This is all the how-to. I'm going to show you Ontario, just as an example. Oh, sorry, I skipped one step. I'll go back. So when folks go in, they either draw their community or they draw their district. And so they can switch and choose which one you want to do. I'll show you drawing community. I go to Ontario. And so similarly, you get an online map, you get the border of the city, and then up here in the top right, you get your tools. You can move the screen around. You can, let's see what this is. You can use the paintbrush, which is the main way you do it. And really, it's really easy. You just choose your paintbrush size. If you want to choose a whole area, like someone says, north of the 10 is my area. So they use a big broad brush. If they want to really fine tune it, they use a small brush, and it doesn't get nearly as big an area. So you choose your area, give it a name, type in the description, and hit save, and boom. That's all there is to it. You can actually draw multiple neighborhoods as well. And the difference between the two tools is if you're in the neighborhood tool, they can overlap. And because obviously some parts of some areas will be in two different neighborhoods. So the neighborhood tool allows you to overlap them. The district tool does not. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy, but you can imagine trying to draw 5 district maps across the whole county using a paintbrush is a big undertaking. So this is, while it does have a districting feature to it, it's mainly a draw your neighborhood tool, but a very handy one and super easy to use. All you do is paint. And of course, if you make a mistake, you can erase. So where these things came south, I just used that same paintbrush motion, but with the eraser tool. So this one's actually out of Tufts University back east. And so they wrote it and we have an agreement with them. They will actually, Ontario doesn't have this, but our agreement with Tufts, when you go to the data layers, here you can look at like Hispanic share of the voting age population. and it colors it in by shade. The ones we're setting up with Tufts will include all of that socioeconomic data that is in the story map. So all of your renter information, income information, all those data fields will also be in here, in addition to just the these defaults that they put in all their projects.
Can I
you
ask a
can see
question?
demographic flavor. Yeah.
Tufts, did you say?
Yes. Yes. Tufts University in Boston.
Yeah, and we're already associated with a map tool through them.
This is one that, yes, we bring this to all our clients. So
Okay, thank you.
yep. Yeah. And again, this is the first online tool in the simple end of the mapping spectrum. So, and like I said, you just hit save, and that saves it, and we actually get those files from the back end. And representable, and the key thing here is that entering of the description. Describe this community, because we may not be able to maintain the exact boundaries of anyone's neighborhood, but if they tell us what the goal is, we can capture that. Representable is a similar site that does the same thing, except it only does the neighborhood drawing. Same thing with the California map. And as I mentioned before, we are reaching out to the California Commission so that we will occasionally check in with them and try to get all of the Santa Barbara County maps that have been submitted to them for the state redistricting. Okay. So those are the basics, kind of our paper tools, our draw your neighborhood tools. Now we get into the fancier end. So this is the first of two. There's two products that are really the high-end mapping tools in this industry. One is from Caliper Corporation. It's not very well known as Caliper. They do dominate in the redistricting field because they're desktop software. Essentially, everyone that does desktop redistricting has used them for 20 years. If any of you worked in transportation, TransCAD is their well-known product, and that's used by almost all transportation planning agencies. The other product, just to give a step ahead, is from Esri, which is the big giant in GIS software, and they're used in every planning department and just about every government department everywhere. Well, I'll come back to their tool. So Caliper's Maptitude Online Redistricting, it's commonly used. I was just looking the other day, we've used it with 28 jurisdictions in the last, well, now I guess it's almost 3 years. It does have a handy, one thing that makes it unique is they have just introduced languages. So it's available in 6 languages: English, Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Mandarin, and Korean. And it is relatively affordable, about $30,000, which is, and so when we started this project, the county was aware of that fee and would not be surprised by that amount. They do have a quick start guide. I'll show you that very briefly, just so you understand how simple it is. Essentially, if you printed this out, I think it's 3 or 4 pages with all the pictures in it. But you just scroll through this, read through it, or refer back to it when needed. But mainly just read through it and you have a good sense of how it works. But I won't make you do that. I'm going to demonstrate it for you. The site I'm going to show you is a demo site they set up for Santa Monica back when Santa Monica was waiting to see if they were going to lose their case and have to go to districts or not. So this is now just used as a demo site. So it's really easy. People just create a login and then you can immediately log in. There's no verification or anything like that. I already have set that up, so I'll jump in. When you come to this, the first thing that comes up is your plan manager of your own personal plans that you've drawn. So of course, if this is your first time in, you're not going to get anything in your My Plans list. You have to click New Plan, and we can set up templates. Obviously, a blank template is common. The current districts are the most common other template. And so someone can choose, do they want to start from the current districts or do they want to start from scratch? I'm going to show you this demo just to illustrate some of the features easiest. So here we have the map. First of all, a little bit of orientation. Let me put some colors in here so you can see, but I'll come back to what I'm doing. So this is the demo map I set up. First of all, around the screen, you've got your language pull down. If you change from English to Spanish, all the text switches to Spanish. You change to Korean, all the text switches to Korean. The map labels don't, but all the commands and options in the different boxes switch. I'll go back to English. The other piece in here is tips. So when someone comes in to this for the first time, they go to tips and it will walk you around the screen. This is brand new. If you talk to folks that use this tool with our clients 2 years ago even, this wasn't in here. And it takes what we used to describe as a 20 to 30 minute learning curve and makes it really, really quick. So someone just walks through each of these tips and has a really good idea of how to jump in. And if they ever forget how to do something, they just go back to tips and walk through that again. It also has context-sensitive help that knows what screen you're in and will show the help for that screen. So it's pretty good. It's much better than it was even 2 years ago in supporting folks. So let me get into themes. So I showed you can color in the districts really easily. The big clear area here is unassigned because I haven't put that in a district. Santa Monica actually was looking at 6 districts in their map, or 7. You can also color it in with those thematics of the demographic, socioeconomic features I was talking about. So here's the color scheme. Purple is 0 to 25% households or renters. And you can go through all those things, college grads. Note that these demographics, as we talked about before, are by tract. The new ones actually we're developing for now are by block group, where that data is available, so a little finer tuned. But when we get down to the voting rights data, that is estimated by city block. So in Santa Monica's case, you can see Latinos, the greens, yellows, and reds, are concentrated in what's called the Pico neighborhood along the 10 freeway. So you can see all these different factors as you're looking at your map. And you also have overlays. So in this case, we have the light rail expo stations. We can add on public facilities. Business improvement districts can be added on. And of course, the main one that comes up in every redistricting is neighborhoods or communities of interest. So you can see Ocean Park, Friends of Sunset Park, all these different overlays are available. And the reason you overlay them is to guide you as you work. So I'll quickly show you how this works for mapping. The numbers in here are the population deviations. So 1, 2, and 3 are pretty close to balance. They're within 1 or 2% of the goal, but 4 is 11% over and 5 is 12% under. So we're going to take people from 4 into 5. And so we want the target where they're going to go is 5. And the source is 4. You don't have to choose a source, but it saves you from messing anything else up. And then perhaps we want to fine tune it a bit. So let's zoom in. And let's say I want to follow, see if I can have renters. Yeah. Well, that doesn't work. There's a big difference between the two. So that may not be a good way to group them. But they're very similar in college grads. So I'll aim for getting yellow areas that share that common feature when I have to move people. So I can just draw a little polygon. And it will actually tell me briefly, here's the area I chose. Here's the number of people. I don't know how well you can see this, but tells me that the change would be 1,500 people. And the resulting deviation in District 5 would be 0.3%. Oh, I did not pre-plan that. It just turned out lucky. So that is exactly what I'm aiming for. You can also scroll down and you can see the resulting Hispanic and other demographic changes if this change is made. So if I like those results, I say, yes, let's do it. If no, I hit the X and say, no, let me try somewhere else. But in this case, I like those results. And you can see it's moved the line. And if I color in the district ID, it's done this. So if I undo my targets and go back out, you can see how that change has been made. So fairly handy. It lets you overlay data and choose your own data that you want to overlay, which is handy. And then when it's time to submit your map, it lets you check for unassigned areas, and it'll pop up a list, obviously, and then it'll let you zoom in on that area. So in this case, obviously, we have this big unassigned area that I haven't gone into yet. But here's one census block that is unassigned. If I want to put it in the district around it, I just say, tell me what district's around it. It's 2. And then I can just use the pick one block tool. I'll color it in, tell me that I'm moving 31 people. I haven't gone out of balance at all. And so check. And then when I rerun this, we only have the one big unassigned area. So fairly handy. You don't have, oh yeah.
Just a quick question. So does this require some sort of pre-existing boundaries, either the actual existing district boundaries or some sort of modeled existing boundaries to work from, or can you draw them kind of freehand?
You can certainly draw freehand. Yeah, one of the options when you say new map is blank map. So it comes in just with the county with nothing in it.
But Doug, the blank map would at least start with the county boundaries, right? So we're not trying to grab somebody from north of the river or south of Ventura or whatever, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, we set the data set up for you, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, so it's just the county's data. The last feature to show you is it will also find non-contiguous districts. So in this case, there's area 1 has the main part, this is 1.5, and then a tiny part. Turns out it's down here. It'll find it. It'll guess that I probably want to put that in 3 to help me out. And boom. And then recheck, and all districts are contiguous. So it helps you out in that respect, as does you'll see, as is the next tool. The last part of this is the collaboration piece and submission piece. So while you're working on this, our hope is not that one person will sit in their house and do a map. It's more like that, people in the community will get together and share it with other people. So while you're developing a map, you can email it to somebody, and it will automatically generate an image of your map and the demographics that are down below on your screen here. And you can send that to somebody with a message. Say, hey, I made the change we talked about. What do you think? And if they have GIS, you can send them a GIS file for their desktop too. So you can check in quickly with someone just by emailing it. You can also share a plan where you give it a name and you post it up, and then it becomes a template that anyone can use. So once you finish your map, you can post it up, and other people who like parts of your map and don't like other parts of your map can use that as a template and change the parts they don't like. And then, oops, yes, okay. And then the last piece is submit plan. Oh, and they turned this on. Caliper's been using this as a demo too. We actually turned this off, but it can be set to require the plan to be population balanced and contiguous. But the share submit plan box, the important thing is it has the same thing that the district R tool says. It says, describe your plan. What are you trying to achieve? Because the story we always give in the public meetings is the odds of any person's one map being adopted exactly as they submit it are pretty much 0. We're going to get lots of input, lots of maps. So what we want to know is, what are they trying to achieve? Because we may be able to achieve that same goal in a slightly modified way and still accomplish their goals. The other part that we share with the public is what happens 90% of the time is someone spends, days getting their area perfect. And then they just population balance the rest of the map. They don't really spend much time on it because it's not their area. And if they say that in their description, then someone from across the county looks at it and says, oh, I can take their template and improve it. If they don't say that, someone across the county says, what idiot drew this plan? They clearly don't know anything about my area. So that description is vital in this whole thing. So So let me just check and make sure I covered everything. So yeah, so that's the basic walkthrough. You've got data. Oh, I didn't show down here. In addition to showing your pending changes data, here's your running total data of all the demographics that are in all the districts. So this is where you keep track of, is how Latino or is it seat, how is there a majority renter seat, all that demographic data is in this window. But they let you hide it to make it easier to work and give you a bigger working space. So that is one tool. That's a caliper tool. Log out of that.
Sorry, Doug, just one more question about this one. Is there
Sure.
a way for you to save for individuals to save plan variations?
Oh, yes. Yes, good question. Thank you. Yes, so the reason that this and the Esri tool have require logins is because they're saving the maps for you. So I actually can't get to the maps, as the administrator of the site, I can't get to the map until you share or submit it. Until then, it's just yours. You can, and yes, you can send in a map and then use that as the template for another map. So, so yes, what we find back when this was harder to use, harder to learn, nobody submitted one map, but half the people got frustrated and went back to the paper tools, and the other half figured it out and sent in 3, 4, 5, 6 maps. We've had people submit 18 or 19 maps in extreme cases. But both of these tools, this isn't particular Caliper, both at Caliper and Esri, really encourage coalition building. So what you see is different groups that are kind of sparring in your public comments will meet outside and try to come to compromise, and hopefully using these tools, be able to come to a compromise and come to you with a compromise map. But yeah, so you can take anything and use it as a template again. So that's the Caliper tool. The other one, Esri, this is, I call it data rich. It is expensive. It runs $95,000 versus the $30,000 for the Caliper. The other downside to it is that it's English only, but the big plus is number one, it's as easy. I'm reluctant to say one's easier to use than the other, but it probably leans a little bit towards Esri being easier to use. It also includes access to Esri's world of online data. So you'll see in this one, I'm not going to demo it. I've got a 10-minute video for them to show you. You'll see them demo how any data that anyone in the world has posted online can be pulled in. So that's a handy feature. So with that, you'll see the demo is actually 14 minutes plus long, but the first 4 minutes I think are really technical. So I'm going to jump ahead and just show you kind of the mapping pieces that I just showed you. So I tested this and it worked. I will make sure it works again. So there we go.
Hi, so this is the front door to the redistricting solution. This is completely user customizable, so the background title can all be modified.
So there we go. I'm going to go from here.
Doug, do you mind full screening this?
Sure. Sorry, what?
Do you mind putting this as a full screen on your screen?
Let's
Yeah, that was
see if
yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, there you go. Thank you.
We have a comprehensive instruction for using the software. In 2010, a number of users asked for in-person training on the software. When this tab was added and they went through the information in this tab, all of those requests went away. By following these steps, users are confident and competent in utilization of the software. Under the View tab, if we realize that we didn't put enough districts within our plan, we can modify those on the fly, and they'll update in the attribute table. We can show target values. We can also adjust how the districts are displayed if we prefer an outboundary or fill. We can modify the district names and how they're displayed. And we also have the option to swap districts. So if we've already created a number of districts and we realize that District 1 needs to be in the top right rather than District 2, we can use this tool. We can modify the district names outright. And we can also change the number of representatives within each district. We can join districts that we previously created. If we click View Regional, we'll see all unassigned geometries. Currently, we're at that extent, so clicking that button will not have any effect. We can move the district window from the bottom of the screen and move it to a separate window. This allows us to have a larger map working area. As soon as we close that pop out, it'll jump right back to the bottom of the screen. Under the Create tab, similar to the View tab, we can adjust the inputs that we had whenever we created the plan. So if I decide now that I want to add OMB data to the plan, I'll do that and it will add to the attribute table on the fly. We can select by attributes or location. In this pane, we can assign an expression. Once we have that expression input, we can filter that spatially by just simply drawing a rectangle over the area of the state we'd like that expression to apply to. We also have more interactive methods of assigning districts to assigning geographies to certain districts. So if I select District 1 and I know I want the city of Denver to be in District 1, I can search by place, view the place, and at the bottom of the Identify pane, I can assign that directly to District 1. And then zoom in, and I can click and begin adding districts point by point. I can use that same rectangle selection tool. I can select using a polygon, or I can also use a polyline. Anything that intersects this polyline will be added to District 1. We can see in the attribute table, it's showing my target population for each district. It's also showing me the total in the district right now and how far off I am from the total. So just under 1 million people off. So for the sake of time, I've gone ahead and balanced the districts, and I'll begin walking through the view scales. So this gold bar indicates my current zoom extent. The magenta bars indicate the breaks between the geometry levels that will be displayed. So currently, I'm viewing county level data. As I zoom in, that gold bar is between two of the magenta districts. I now know that I'm viewing tract level data. If I zoom in further, it's block group, and even further, I can view block level information. I can then change the base map. These are all preloaded. I can view imagery with labels, National Geographic information, or the terrain base map just based on user preference. I can also assign a theme. So while I'm assigning geometries to specific districts, if I want to know the total number of people in those districts, I will keep it the field a total. Click update. The thematic map will apply. And if I'm at the correct zoom extent, we'll begin seeing the number of people in each district populate in the center of each geometry. I can then add content. So if I don't know where Denver is, but I need to, I can search for Denver as a place. This will put a flag right in the middle of it to help orient me to the location. I can also add ArcGIS data. So if I want a Colorado River Basin, I'll type in River Basin. Do a search for that information. And if there's any publicly available feature services, I'll be able to add that service directly into the map. If I have a service that I host and I have the URL, I can copy and paste that URL directly into the software and load the information that way. Next, we have the review pane. I can view a plan histogram, which is going to show me a bar chart of available demographic variables. This will be organized by district. So if I want to see the total white non-Hispanic population, I can select that in the dropdown. The same for Asian non-Hispanic or other. I can then view a plan distribution. Again, this is based on a demographic variable, total non-Hispanic, Black non-Hispanic, and so on. I then have the option to view the district distribution. This will show me all the demographics based on my districts, and it will also, as I hover over it, show me the percentage breakdown for each demographic. Next, we have a compactness test. All of these tests are approved by the Department of Justice. And if you aren't sure how each test is calculated, you can hover over the title and it'll give you a quick description of the calculation. This will also show me if there are any holes in my districts. And And so now I know that there's going to be a disconnect within District 1 of one geometry. Next, I can check the integrity of my plan. This is going to make sure that no geometry is assigned to 2 districts, that all of my districts connect, and that there aren't any geometries not assigned to a district. This is showing me that I have 2 errors, so it's saying that one of the geometries is not assigned to a district. So by clicking zoom to, it'll zoom me into that geometry, and then I can manually assign that to the appropriate district, which in this case is District 1. I can then see that District 2 has 2 disconnected parts. I can again zoom to those parts, so I'm seeing that there's a larger area of District 2 that connects, and then a smaller area of District 2 that does not. So again, I'll just assign that to District 1 and remedy that issue. As soon as I close this pane, it will run the integrity test again automatically, just to validate that the efforts that I've gone through remedied all of the issues. Next, we can run reports. And for that demonstration, I'll go ahead and load up the Colorado Senate districts just because they're a little more interesting. There are 35 districts that can be broken down, and we can run reports based on the population, the voting age population, district geography and district statistics, unassigned districts, bill text, compactness of the districts, assigned district splits, and meets and bounds. This runs in the browser, so it can take some time depending on the geography that you're working within and the number of districts created. For that reason, I've gone ahead and run a report already for the assigned district splits. And what it's done is it's broken down which counties are located in District 1 and any FIPS information associated with that district. What it also does is it provides individual demographic information for each of those FIPS levels. We can also run a bill text report. Again, I've already run this before this demonstration, and it will show me which blocks and which counties are located within each district. If a user submits a plan that we'd like to review against our adopted plan, or perhaps the plan that we have as a draft, we can import that plan and overlay it and view those discrepancies on the fly. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and created a comparison plan for the Senate districts. Once the plan loads, we'll see that there are hatchet areas that are imported into the plan. These are the areas that are different between the proposals. So you can see that there are a number of them throughout the state. I can also view the differences in the information in a tabular form, and it will also show me the difference in population, either as a negative red text or a positive green text. If I'd like to, I can merge those changes, or if I have specific interest in one of those discrepancies, I can click zoom to and it will take me directly to that comparison. Under the Share tab, we can attach information to the plan. So if a user wants to attach a Word document that expresses why they decided to put the districts in the areas they have, they can upload that file and include it with the plan. We can modify the plan information, so I can say that this is an internal use only, and save that. Users can add comments to the plan. This is specifically useful for plans shared with the public. It will document the user that made the comment, the date and time the comment was made, and what the comment was. And you can also view an access log. This is going to track the users that modified the plans, when they modified the plan, and what they did with it. We have the option to share this map outside of the redistricting software. So we can publish that as a plan package, publish a KML, or publish a feature layer straight to ArcGIS Online. We also have an option to share the plan within the solution. There are different levels of sharing, so we can share this with everyone, or we can share this with specific user groups. For this example, I'll share this with everyone as a read-only file. I can validate that the plan was shared by going to the File tab, clicking Open, viewing shared plans with everyone, and then we have a Colorado Senate districts shared for internal use. We can manage our groups. So as I showed briefly, you can can share to specific groups. You can create new groups within the software. You can also invite users to those groups without exiting the redistricting solution. If you receive an invite, you can accept the invite under the group invites button. You can also edit your user profile. Now, because we've already gone through the integrity tests for the 2-district plan, I'm going to jump back to that one just before we submit the plan. Under the Submit tab, I have the option to submit the plan. It will run the integrity test one final time to make sure no changes were made between the previous test and the current attempt to submit. And then I can input my contact information. So I can have organization information, an explanation of the plan objectives, and it will also warn the user that the plan can't be edited once it's submitted. When I click submit plan, I'll be warned one more time that I can't edit the plan prior to submission. Clicking OK will submit the plan. This plan will be submitted to a curator. The curator is assigned upon deployment of the software, and that is the process for creating and submitting a complete and legitimate plan using the redistricting solution.
So one thing I will note, Esri makes great software. They're really bad at demos. So I'm sure Commissioner McClintock has run into this before as well. So it is very full-featured. The story I always tell about it is, we used it in San Diego in the city council redistricting 10 years ago. And before our training session, the link was live, and one of the commissioners actually jumped on, figured out how to use it, and drew most of a map before we ever had a training session. So there's a lot that he was showing there, a lot of kind of inside technical stuff, but it is really easy to figure out and use, as is the caliper. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Rios, you have your hand up?
Yes, I know you mentioned Esri was pretty easy to use, but you mentioned that you cannot use it, change the language to Spanish or Korean or any of the other languages like the other softwares. Okay,
Right.
yeah, I just want to express. Go ahead.
Yeah, what we'd have to do is make a little how-to video, a short 2 or 3 minute video, and then we just have to dub that in other languages or subtitle it to get around that. But you're right, in the tool itself, it's only in English, unfortunately.
Yeah, for me, considering the communities that I know of might be a huge barrier, and I would hate to start off on that foot. And then I did see the cost was a little bit more expensive than the rest, but that was just some observations and comments that I wanted to make on it.
So maybe Ms. Anderson, you want to just address maybe not the appropriateness of the cost, but what the implications would be from a process, or what was anticipated in the budget, et cetera.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners. So this is something that NDC had brought as part of the proposal and in talking about what the other costs down the road were going to be. So we're here now. So exactly as Dr. Johnson indicated, the price tags don't necessarily surprise me. What we budgeted, because at the time, the software, I guess, gets issued about now. So really final costs weren't, this is actually the first time I'm seeing the final costs as well, but they're within the ballpark of where he was indicating. What we have right now in the budget is about $75,000. So we would have to move some things around if the Esri product was chosen. Obviously that falls within the available sources if the calipers was used.
Mr. McClintock.
So, Dr. Johnson, can you just give us your very honest opinion on what's going to facilitate your work so that you could help us do real-time investigation into districting options based on the questions and ideas that we raise in a meeting like this, or that members of the public raise in meetings like this? What's the tool that's going to allow you to really give us the answers to questions we have?
Sure. So on their own, I think the Esri tool has more capability. He briefly showed that you could search, like find everything in Denver, and it would highlight that and you could assign that. So built in the tool is that kind of handy features. Also the ability to pull in data from outside sources. So if someone came up and said, you know, I'm from the city of Lompoc and we'd like you to catch our downtown, and here's a geographic file, boom, you can pull that in. The reality for us is that's great, and that actually simplifies things for the average user. For us, we've done this enough that we can do it equally well in both tools. We'll actually mostly be using the Map2 desktop software ourselves because it's, as a desktop, it's much faster. And what you end up doing, you can still get those same capabilities with the caliper tool. What you end up doing is pulling those outside geographic layers into the interactive review map so that everyone can see them. And then you just switch from screen to screen as you're drawing your map to make sure you get the right areas. So you don't lose the ability to access that information. It's just a two-step process versus a built-in process. So.
And then a follow-up, what do you think is going to really realistically facilitate community input?
I think the both do a very good job. You know, both are going to attract your more dedicated community members. The others, you know, the people are only a little bit interested or just going to comment on draft maps, and then you'll get some that will dig in with the simple tools. So this is really your kind of, okay, I'm bought into this is important, I'm going to start drawing maps crowd. And we've had great success with both. Esri is probably a little bit easier to use. The big question is it $65,000 better to use? And that's a very hard question. So what we find is all of our local jurisdictions, curiously, with the exception of Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara in 2015, they used Esri. But back then it only cost $48,000. So most of them use the caliper tool, and we do see it working very well. The Esri tool is much more popular for larger counties. You know, Los Angeles is using Esri. States use both, but tend to lean towards Esri because the cost factor isn't really a factor for them. And those large IT shops have you know, Esri integrates into their shop really easily. So.
Commissioner Olmedo, and then I think I saw Commissioner Adams next.
Yes, sir. I mean, you brought up some, I guess, just in terms of fiscal responsibility with our budget. I mean, I think that the first mapping tool, you know, is more ideal. Two, as Commissioner Rios brought up, the language, right, opportunities, having it built in is way different from dubbing something, probably additional costs associated with that. And three, the other thing just to think about, as Commissioner Atkins had brought up, our mapping tool is not going to determine our community engagement, right? That's going to be what we go out, you know, and build relationships and do that. You know, I see those paper map tools being way more important for some of the communities that we're really trying to reach, right? I think the mapping tool is nice icing, you know, on the cake, but not the cake itself. So just some thoughts.
Just if I may on that, I agree with you for most folks. That was kind of what we pitch most groups. But when we did work up in San Rafael, it was fascinating. We went out and did a neighborhood forum all in Spanish. And what happened was there was maybe 50 people in the room. And there was a college kid from the neighborhood who had spent 20 minutes beforehand and figured out the tool. And it was kind of exactly what we want. So he knew how to use the tool, and he sat there using the tool as the other 40 or 50 people around him gave him ideas, and it kind of was the ideal. So I think you're exactly right. In those meetings, talking to people, yes, the paper tool is gonna drive it. Hopefully that will catch their attention, and then they'll start gathering, and you know, someone will step up and figure it out. So.
Commissioner Adams and then Commissioner Bray.
So, sorry.
Oh, nope.
Sorry. Your presentation was broken into two parts. 1, 2, 3 tools that you can't draw maps with, and then 4A and 4B tools that you can draw maps with, right?
Well, the number one, you're right.
Or
it's
free
just
tools and pay for tools.
Yeah, it's simple, kind of the simple tools and then the power user tools. Yeah.
So it seems to me that between 4A and 4B, there is no option, but 4A because of the language issue, right? I mean, English only doesn't sound like it works for Santa Barbara County, right? Of the two that we pay for, right? But I do have a follow-up question, and that is with 4A and 4B, things we pay for and use to redistrict, to draw maps, to analyze the redistricting process. Are these primarily tools that the commission is using, or are they also tools that we would be sharing with others? Your San Rafael anecdote suggests that you can use one of 4A or 4B in outreach opportunities. And because of where Santa Barbara is and what languages we speak here, it seems like there is really no choice except for what's it called again?
Caliper.
Yeah, Caliper's Maptitude. Another question on the first three, the online interactive review map, which you can't draw maps with, the simple map drawing tools, the paper tools, and then District R. Are any of those, I know District R is English only. Is the online interactive review map English only as well? The first one you talked about?
It is, but there's very little text in it. So actually that instructional window that pops up, that we can copy and paste anything in. So we can put the instructions in any language. The labels appear, but there's only about, maybe 20 words. So we could very easily do a translated single screenshot for that.
Okay.
The paper tools we can do in multiple languages.
Does any redistricting commission ever choose a free tool to do all their redistricting with?
So in very small jurisdictions, the District R is fine. If you've got a 5 square mile city with 30,000 people, it'll get the job done. But yeah, when you're where you run into problems is like if someone wants to pick the city of Buellton and assign it to Supervisorial District 3, well, you have to go in and paint the census blocks of Buellton in District R, and the other tools you just pick Buellton. And
so free tools are not effective for the job before us.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Bray, then Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed there was a $13,500 training charge for Esri, which puts the total at $108,000 versus the $30,000 for Caliper. What's that training, $13,500 training fee for?
Yeah, it's back end training on the administrative side. And I'm not sure if we'd need it or not. I didn't have time to clarify exactly what's involved in that. So I'm not sure if it'd be needed. There's a chance it would to get us up and running, but it may not. So, yeah.
Mr. Bradley and then Turley.
Okay, bear with me. I've got a couple of questions written down here. First of all, you mentioned when talking about Esri, which is beginning to fade, I think, in terms of its language limitations. I agree with Commissioner Adams. That's a serious limitation. And I think Commissioner Rios made the same point, among others. But the data that come in from, quote, anyone, anywhere in the world, is that vetted for currency and accuracy? I mean, does the company, if they're just importing, say, local promotional information that's coming from chambers of commerce or whatever, is any of that being filtered or vetted for accuracy, or is it just kind of vacuum up everything?
So it doesn't actually go through Esri. So they're not vetting it because they're not controlling it. So it would all be about the source of it. If it's coming from the city of Buellton, it's pretty good. If it's coming from Joe up the street, you have to take that in consideration. So no, there's no vetting other than whoever is doing the mapping deciding whether or not they want to consider that.
That scared me too. Esri's world of online data overlays, I wrote down, and it just sounded scary.
I think of the flexibility, some might say the weakness of Wikipedia, for example, where anyone can put anything up. But I did also want to follow up with a couple more questions. The first three tools that you outlined, is it possible to export and import data if we have one part of our county that's using some of those simpler tools and we want to import that into, say, CalPERS product? How easy is that? Or do they have to operate, in siloed and then somehow put it together in hard copy? How does that work?
Your NDC team works very hard. So when the maps come to you for consideration and go out to the public for here's the maps we received, they'll all look the same. It doesn't matter. I would say if someone drew it on a napkin or if someone used any of these tools, we process them all the same and they all go up online and get considered looking the exact same with the same analysis attached to them. So it's only an input feature, and then we at NDC process it and standardize it.
Two more quick questions. One has to do with the possibility of just software testing in these tools. Anyone who's been around software long enough knows that as you go through different versions of software, you can get coding biases and errors or Einstein, things that are resident to the software. Is any of that tested for? For example, if a previous district supervisor was adept at getting extra infrastructure like bus or bike lanes, does that sort of bias get integrated into the software in such a way that it might weight the redrawing of boundaries so they just end up more like the old ones than they would have been? Is anyone testing the software for that kind of Einstein error?
So every conference you go to nowadays on redistricting has somebody there showing off their computer algorithm driven redistricting. And everyone thinks that their algorithm is awesome. And they all crash and burn for exactly the reason you're talking about. So, you get in a room of professionals and we all just kind of laugh like, yeah, I can see your algorithm from a mile away. So neither of these tools has any kind of auto mapping capability to it. All the decisions on what territory gets assigned where is done by the individual who's inspecting the data themselves. So you're exactly right. Anything algorithm driven, we'd have to check for, but there's no algorithms in this. This is simply, it's a hammer and you're deciding what to hit it with it.
One last question, please. One of the chief concerns that we all have is we're going to get our census data very late. And so we're going to have this sort of rush at the end after we've defined our communities of interest and other, sort of block-based data. Which do you recommend, which package do you think will be best for integrating that late arrival of data so that we can get done on time?
Yeah, so this is the advantage of, we've been talking to both of these vendors for years in anticipation of 2021 and then throughout COVID. So the deal we have with Caliper, and this is where the possible training fee comes in with ESRI, is they might have to show us how to do this, is that we can put these tools up actually in just a couple weeks because we have all the demographic data. That's all released. The only thing that's delayed is the total population number. And we at NDC are just finishing up what we think are some really good estimated total population counts. So what we've worked out with both these vendors is the ability to post this estimated data set so that residents can start playing around with it. And then when the official data comes out, flipping them around, and all the maps that residents have drawn will automatically be updated into the new data. So someone will see that their map, it will suddenly be a little out of population balance in all likelihood. Because the line I always say that the only thing I can guarantee of any estimate is that it will be wrong. But it does allow, hopefully, the community to start drawing. Now, by law, we can't start drawing. The commission and NDC cannot draw any maps until the official data is out. But the residents can start working on this and drawing their communities, of course. So yeah, we're anticipating that being a big challenge, and the vendors are working hand in hand with us to be ready for that.
Commissioner Turley and then McClintock.
You. This is all really interesting. I had a couple of questions. First off, do all of these tools require consistent access to the internet, or are there versions of these tools that are similar to desktop apps where the data can be downloaded and used without Wi-Fi access?
Yeah, it's a good question. So no, they do require online access because all the data crunching is actually done at the server. Where we do have people with computers that don't have good access, they tend to use that Excel kit.
Okay, great. And then my 2 cents is that I think that people who are going to use these tools probably will be willing to put up with a bit of frustration in learning how to do this. And so I'm not really sure if it's worth paying the $60K more for something that's slightly easier to use, but maybe not as accessible, especially if we have to pay to dub the video, which is, for your reference, in the marketing group, we're talking about this right now. It's about $400 to $600 per language to dub a short video. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at with it, but I'm also really curious to hear the input from community members on this call, because I feel like they're probably some of our power user group. So would like to hear from them as well.
Commissioner McClintock and then Commissioner Adams.
So Doug, are we dependent on the vendors for updating data in the maps? For example, if we have new maps come in defining communities of interest, are we going to be able to update the underlying maps to analyze districts based on those data without interacting with the vendor?
No, so that's all on us at NDC. So it's a little tricky. The caliper tool, you kind of get the data sets, so there'll be the first launch and the second launch, and stuff that comes in won't really be added to it. What happens is all the stuff that comes in gets posted to the review map. And so if someone wants to take a community of interest into consideration, they'll see it in the interactive review map, and then they just have to take that into consideration as they go into the caliper tool. That's where Esri kind of has the edge, is we can add data on the fly there. But is that a $65,000 edge? You know, I don't know. Probably not. But yeah, no. Once we get the software up and running, then it's all on NDC. So
Commissioner Adams, and then I think we'll see if we got some public comment on this, and then come back and give staff some direction about tools we want to use. Commissioner Adams.
Commissioner Bradley, just a point of clarification. You used a word that sounded German while you were saying something very interesting about bias. And I wondered if you could tell me what that word was.
Yeah, of course, it's Einstellung. Here, I'll put it in the chat box.
Thank you.
Einstellung means a kind of a repetitive error that you make when you're used to doing things one way and you don't see the opportunities for doing them a newer or better way. It's a common problem that's resident in software design.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's turn to our friends in the public side of the meeting. And Ms. Tilton, is there anybody who has asked to make some comments on this item?
Yes, we have a single hand raised. It's Andy Caldwell.
Good evening, Mr. Caldwell. Welcome back.
Thank you. I don't know how to say this. You were all picked because you are exceedingly abundantly beyond average intelligence. Okay, that's how you were picked. I work with. We have over 1,000 member companies, not 1,000 members, but over 1,000 member companies. And I could tell you, without a doubt, I've been through, this is going to be my 4th county redistricting effort. I'm lost. Okay. I don't look at that computer program and think I'll ever figure it out. Now, the first one I was in, it was all paper. The last one I was in, the county gave us a staff person. We made an appointment with the county staff person, told them where we wanted the lines. And I drew, literally, folks, I drew over 50 maps in the last 30 years. I don't know how many people in the public will be able to do this. Certainly some would, but I don't think the majority is. And then I'm going to tell you the bad news here, okay? I've seen this getting super, super complicated and intricate, and I know that That's kind of the goal of the law in terms of the finesse and fine tuning of all the different categories. But I can swear on a Bible, in the 3 districting things I've gone through, there was only 3 things the county looked at. Now, this is the Board of Supervisors. They looked at my Latino population because that's the only majority minority districts you can draw. They looked at whether they kept the cities whole, and they looked to whether we had equal population. That was it. That was absolutely it. And I keep worrying that if we throw at the public all these literally thousands of nuances, they're going to just walk away and say, this is too complicated. So my major question is, can I call NDC and make an appointment for them to help me draw a map? Or can I arrange a town hall and have them show up and draw us a map? Because the county did that in previous redistricting. It wasn't everybody become a GIS computer expert, because everybody that's telling me this is easy has got either a master's degree or a PhD in demography or GIS systems or something like that. Versus bringing a welder off the street, which is, we've got welders in collab and electricians. I want to know whether or not they're going to be there to help us.
Great question. Doug?
I can address that. So it is a little intimidating without a doubt at first, and we will do community forums where we'll have an information session. And then for those that want to stick around and learn how to use the tools, we'll actually walk around and help them use it. But I will say that intimidation factor passes very quickly when we're in these sessions. In the city of Santa Barbara process, which only had, I forget how long, that was crazy fast, even faster than this project will be. We still got 21 maps drawn by city residents and submitted. So we have seen it work. We're available to help and to answer questions, but we're not going to sit down with folks and draw maps. It's just too much time. And there's another piece too, is that it's intimidating and it's a legal liability too. If I'm there with you, or someone from NDC is there with you, helping you draw your map, we can have our deposition taken on everything that's said in that conversation. I'd rather have the neighbors sitting with one of the neighbors at a computer. And it does look intimidating, but trust me, it works. In El Cajon, it was great. We saw the Middle Eastern community, gathering in their, mainly in one church, and getting together and drawing maps together. So it works, as hard as it is to imagine from this quick demo. It works really well.
Ms. Tilton, anyone else?
We have another speaker, Spencer Brandt.
Welcome back, Mr. Brandt.
Hello, Chair Morris and Commissioners. I actually raised my hand because I wanted to agree with the spirit of what Mr. Caldwell was mentioning. In my day job, I work with a lot of residents and found myself over this past year, as I'm sure many of you have, in the process of teaching them how to use some new pieces of technology. And I gained a strong appreciation for the fact that we all think in different ways, and it can be really difficult for some people to pick up some of these online computer-based tools. So any technical support that can be provided, whether it's from NDC, whether it's from the county, whether it's from commissioners themselves, I think that is going to be really valuable and really crucial in order to make this process work for community members. Because, people like me, like you mentioned, are most engaged residents, we'll be able to pick it up, no problem, right? Just by sheer tenacity and will and interest in the concept. But I think the hope is that we can get others to have a seat at the table too. So thank you.
We have another hand raised by a phone caller whose last 4 digits are 0723.
Good evening.
Can y'all hear me now?
We can, go ahead.
Perfect. Hi, this is Kara Solis again. So I know, Mr. Johnson, you mentioned being in person helping people. I was wondering if there's a plan for the hybrid model for people who might be tuning in via Zoom to help them as well.
Yes, it's a good question. Thank you. And yes, we actually prefer that because we can share screen just like I've been doing for those demos and actually have the resident share their screen with us and we can talk them through any technical issue they've run into. So yes, we're definitely happy to do that.
And there are no more hands raised from the public side.
So Doug, let me just clarify from my mind. I think what I hear you saying is that we're looking at a range of options for people to engage, from paper through a fully interactive online tool. The question is not whether we're going to use the first 1, 2, 3 kind of steps in that progression, but it's which of the last the last link in the chain we're going to select tonight. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, the only decision is Caliper versus Esri. The other ones are already in the package. And
yeah, and then again, Commissioner Adams has been paying more attention to us over the last several weeks than I think we thought. She mentions using some Sherpas to help folks, and I think we've talked a number of times about kind of some key ambassadors or folks that have expressed an interest in being involved in the process. And I could envision some of them coming to some of our very first public engagement sessions, taking the training and then spreading out among their communities to be kind of unofficial guides and Sherpas of the process. Is that?
Oh, definitely true. Yeah, and that's what we want, is the community members helping each other draw maps, because then you don't have an official person from the commission looking over their shoulder as they do it. Right. We're certainly always available as technical support when something is wrong, of course.
Right. Commissioner McClintock, did I see you raise your hand just now?
Yeah, you actually asked some of the questions I had, but one additional one. Mr. Johnson, are any of these tools sort of standing out as ones that we would use just for drawing communities of interest versus district boundaries?
Yeah, so certainly the District R tool is kind of optimized for that. And so, I mean, the language. So on the back end, District R creates a JSON file and a shapefile that come right into Caliper and the review map. So that's the main draw your neighborhood tool. In addition, just grab a piece of paper and draw it for us.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So commissioners, anyone want to kick us off with a motion to see if we can get some direction for Doug and his team to move forward? And Commissioner Twiebell.
Oh, I just wanted to ask one additional question. If we would choose the less expensive tools, can we then add in education and maybe come in a little more than, the minimum amount, but maybe we'd have some money in our budget for education?
Yeah, I would, that was one thing I didn't want to bring up, because if anyone was really into the Esri tool, I didn't want to say something that might drag that down. But yes, I mean, as Ms. Anderson mentioned, there's budget, and if you go under the expectation, then you can talk to the county about reallocating money they've already budgeted versus having to go get new money. And it's always easier to reallocate existing budgeted funds than it is to get new funds. So I'll say that as the unofficial outsider. I don't know if Ms. Anderson wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that notion. We have 75 slotted. If it's less than that, then it gives the opportunity either for outreach, for other things that come out through this process as you guys move forward. So that would make sense.
Right, Commissioner Bradley.
I just wanted to also highlight what Commissioners Turley, Twiebell, and Bray said earlier about funds. I wonder if you could, again, I may have missed it. What is the price tag on the caliper maptitude package?
30,000.
Okay.
Oh, all right. So it's well within our budget. And I think per Commissioner Twibell's suggestion, that would give us quite a bit of wiggle room to maneuver with. I think that recommends it highly in addition to its multilingual features. And then I think also, Mr. Johnson, you made the point that it works very well with District R for doing our neighborhood mapping or neighborhood drawing, communities of interest and such, per Commissioner McClintock's point. So it sounds like the best dual packages we could go with currently, based on what I'm hearing, is the District R for doing that kind of outreach aspect, and then the caliper maptitude package for doing the actual drawing of boundaries. It's my 2 cents.
Can we take that 2 cents as an official motion?
Yes, sir. I'll
Very
motion.
well. Commissioner McClintock seconds. Commissioner Olmedo, you were raising your hand. Was that be the third, or did you have a question?
Nope. Let's do it.
Very good. All right, we have a motion in a second. Ms. Tilton.
Mute. Commissioner Trotsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Twibell.
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock.
Aye, and thank you, Dr. Johnson, for that awesome work.
Vice Chair Turley.
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley.
Aye.
Commissioner Olmedo.
Aye.
Commissioner Bray.
Aye.
Commissioner Rios.
Aye.
Chair Morris.
Aye.
Motion
Commissioner Adams?
passes.
We need Commissioner Adams.
Oh, Commissioner Adams.
Aye. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Commissioner Bradley, for a new word.
Very good. All right, folks, item number 10 is a discussion and direction to staff regarding scheduling of public hearings from now through map adoption. We've made an attempt to try to put some dates on a map all the way through the process. If you're looking at your packet, I believe it starts on page 41. Somewhere in that range. We're also going to share it on the screen. Ms. Tilton, do you want to kind of explain what we've got here?
Yes, thank you, Chair Morris. And then after my presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Sal from our legal team to talk about some parameters once we head into these meetings. Before we get into some of the details about this timeline, I do want to remind the public, the commission's well aware of it, is that we have specific state statutes we must follow, and we have specific requirements of our ordinance that we must follow. I'm going to quickly just go through those, what those are. And that will help you to understand why it's so intricate in the way that this timeline is laid out and the dates that were chosen. Before maps are drawn, we must at least have 7 hearings, and those hearings have to be held over a period of time that's no fewer than 30 days. Once the maps are drawn, we must have another 7 set of hearings, and those must be held over a period of no fewer than 30 days. After the maps are drawn, we also must publish in the newspaper, or we must publish the maps for, not the newspaper, but for 7 days before we adopt. We also must publish a notice of these hearings in the newspaper in all areas of the county. Additionally, we have, as everyone is well aware, we have delayed census data. Normally, we would have the data that we need by now. We're not going to get the census that we need to start working with the local population numbers until mid to late August. That's when the federal census will release it to the states. Then we have an additional requirement from the state of California that the state needs to adjust those population counts to reassign state prisoners to their home addresses. The state is saying that will take 6 weeks. So we have the data released mid to late August, then we have 6 weeks. There's an additional statute that says that the commission or the commission's consultant cannot produce a map until a 3-week waiting period after the state adjusted data is available. Fortunately, that 3-week period gets reduced if we're within a certain amount, a certain time of when we need to adopt a map. And our adoption date is December 15th. So we're actually not looking to be able to have the ability to draw maps until probably early October.
Wow.
So now that we've kind of teed that up, I want to quickly show you what you're looking at here. These are the first sets of hearings that we've been working with the dates, and we've been working with county staff on this timeline as well. And the other requirement, and this is these are key requirements, is that these the locations that we held the pre-maps hearing, we hold one hearing in each district. So this particular timeline accommodates that of holding one hearing in each district for the pre-map hearings. There's also a requirement in the ordinance that we vary the days of the week and the times of the day so that we can meet a variety of work schedules. So this timeline has accommodated that as well. Additionally, we need to continue to conduct business of the commission. So the way that we've structured this is that we have certain of these hearings that will be a combination of a public hearing with the public, and then at the end, after the public hearing, we'll have a business meeting. Also within the state statutes is that the hearings must start at a fixed time. So that is one of the reasons why we will hold any business after the public hearings, because it's a requirement that we start the hearings at the fixed time that is published. So now that I've keyed that up, what will be happening at these meetings once we start the pre-map hearings 1 through 7. We'll be giving an overview of the redistricting process, and then we'll be doing mapping tools training. And I can tell you that I personally have been very successful at having people who are completely lost and intimidated and overwhelmed with maptitude leave those sessions being able to draw a map. At these meetings, we often encourage people, bring your own laptop so that you can log in and follow along as we go. We're not sure we're going to be able to have this, but sometimes we are able to provide some laptops, but we may have some limitations. When we met with the county wanted to stress that that any one of these meetings takes staff. It takes staff to do a number of things, because one of the requirements is that we record the meetings and that they be accessible to the public. So we need to have locations that are accessible to the public. And when that means that we're going to have members, or we're going to have staff members opening those facilities and having them available, as well as having all the audio-visual people there to man them. I know there was a discussion of following the model of the Board of Supervisors and having dual meetings. One is when we have our business meetings in the Santa Barbara location, also holding it simultaneously in the Santa Maria. We roundtabled that with the county staff, and because there would be staff members who not only they would be required to pay overtime, which is not budgeted for. There was concern that the staff members certainly don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that, to provide a whole other meeting. They're pretty stretched thin right now and limited staffing. So we're looking at this this particular timeline. You'll see in the middle column there's a line item called quorum, and not all of them require a quorum. So not all of these public hearings would require the full commission. But we are asking that a quorum be there for, it's generally once a month. As we get towards map adoption, it will be less. So we will have these types of business meetings once a month. And when you see quorum highlighted in the fourth column, you can be certain that that's going to be a meeting that you should make sure you can try to be there for. We tried to hold those meetings, keeping in mind that we had a hard time finding this time slot where all the commissioners could meet. So we tried to stick to the Wednesday at 6 o'clock, understanding that people have work commitments during the day that are on the commission. And we are hoping that this time slot works for everyone. There are, I believe when we get to page 2, there may be a Monday meeting. Another requirement of the statute is that one of the meetings be held after 6 p.m. or on a Saturday and Sunday. So we have accommodated both. We've included a Saturday meeting and we have included an after 6 o'clock start time. So what we'll be doing is we'll be working with county staff to secure the locations. When we were having our initial discussions with the legal team and with Chair Morris, it was decided that for District 3, it'd be important that we have 2 meetings in District 3, and one identifying Guadalupe, having a meeting particularly in Guadalupe because we have heard so much feedback about how that community wants to be involved in this process and oftentimes feels isolated from the process. So hearings 1 through 7 are laid out for you here. When you see the location, we've noted going down to the second public hearing, we'll start off having that one in District 2, then hearing 3 in District 1, hearing 4 in District 3, hearing 5, another one in District 3 in the Guadalupe area, hearing 6 in District 5, and hearing 7 in District 4. So for District 1, we'll have a home location. And for now, the county is still working those details out. It will likely be the Planning Commission room in Santa Barbara. However, the Planning Commission room is not always available. And when we were discussing this with county staff, we felt it may be beneficial to alternate that home location with the county's meeting room in Santa Maria. So some of these meetings where it says SBC home, some of those may be in Santa Barbara, and some of them actually may be in the Santa Maria site that they currently hold the Board of Supervisors meetings. So after we finish hearings 1 through 7, then we await the release of the census data and the adjustment by the state. And then we will have a commission meeting to review the data and to see where we lie with the existing districts, how the districts are out of balance. We'll also have another business meeting on that day. Any questions on this first page? And I can't.
Commissioner Rios.
Yes, I have a question about location. So for like, I know you mentioned the county building in Santa Maria, for example. I think about where it's located. Are we thinking about other places in town that are maybe more in the center of town, just considering accessibility to the community, bigger spaces that have traditionally been used by the city, organizations where people commonly are familiar with, like, oh, I know where that's at. I don't know if that's the conversation being had versus that county building.
We're certainly.
Or did you mean home as in like the staff will be there versus like the hearing will be there?
So when it has the home meeting, we are envisioning a county facility. And the reason why is we're learning it's very difficult to find facilities that meet all the requirements. So we have to have handicapped accessibility. We have to have the ability for audio visual. We have to also have, oh gosh, I'm sorry, it just slipped my mind. There were several restrictions that we were thinking, oh, this would be a good spot, but then we realized, oh, it did not have all the requirements, and it takes there's a lot of logistics involved in, especially if we're going to try to have hybrid meetings where we also have Zoom, and then internet access was one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, because I was thinking a lot about, I mean, like you mentioned, like where the county buildings, but I was thinking of places like the Veterans Hall. I know that's a very common space in the town. Or even I want to put out there like the Able Maldonado Center, which is like in the, you know, more center of town. But I do see what you mean. We're like, what is possible for us to use? But yeah, those were two that I was thinking of, or like the fairgrounds as well, those buildings there, if that was possible to use. But yeah, just putting that out there, at least for Santa Maria.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm making all of these notes as we're going to, because these will be definitely ones. And we have Dr. Daniel Phillips on our team that is working with the county staff to secure the locations. And internet access as we get towards the map drawing is going to be very crucial too, so that we can show all those tools as we're doing it. And actually during the map drawing, internet access is really important. But so that's one of the challenges. These are all good. This is all good feedback in helping us to find these locations.
Commissioner McClintock.
Ms. Tilton, you mentioned the importance of having laptops available for members of the public to use during our trainings and drawing sessions. Do you think it would make sense to allocate some of our tools budget to purchase a handful of Chromebooks and inexpensive laptops for people to use for this purpose?
That's something we could look into and see if the county has some available. Some jurisdictions have computer lab type laptops that we've been able to use. As far as purchasing them and getting them all downloaded, that would be, I don't know that that's been considered, but something we could look into.
Mr. Trotsky.
A question, thanks Shalice on this. This is a great schedule. When you were talking about District 1 and talking about the possibility that hearing might be in Santa Maria, did I hear you right on that?
I'm sorry, I may have misspoken. That District 1 will be in District 1, the one that's assigned for District 1. But where it says SBC home on the others, and you'll see more of those as we get to page 2, that could alternate between Santa Barbara and Santa Maria, depending on the availability, because the Planning Commission room is not always available.
Okay, I can just tell you in District 1, oftentimes we have meetings at MUS school, Montecito Union. And they've got great parking and I think have all the requirements you're looking for.
Great.
Okay.
Commissioner Adam.
I just wanted to say thanks to whoever built this spreadsheet. Was that
Thank
you?
you. It was a group, yeah, largely it was me, but it took a group effort for sure. And it was quite the puzzle.
Yeah,
with all those parameters.
You know, folks, one of the other things I wanted to point out, you know, Ms. Tilton pointed out the difference between quorum and not, right? So some of these sessions that are just hearings and not business sessions, we don't need 11 of us. There's nothing that says all 11 can't come, but it wouldn't be required to host the meeting. And one of the things that I would encourage commissioners to consider as you build your personal kind of calendars around this would be, you know, I think we've talked a couple times about you're from a district, but you're serving the county. Maybe look at going to meetings that are not in your district, right? So that you hear those perspectives from other parts of the county. My personal preference would be we get a minimum of 3 of us at every one of these, but you know, again, we've got some flexibility within that. So let's jump down to the second page and look at the after the maps get drawn first. Then we'll finish this up and we will allow for some public comment before we wrap it up here.
As we get to map presentation, as I mentioned, internet is very crucial. And so some of the very, very important decisions, well, we will be closely looking at maps and possibly getting direction from the commission on minor modifications. We'll definitely want to have stable internet and stable locations. So most of those will be at county facilities at either in Santa Maria or Santa Barbara. So at the first hearing, what's going to happen is we will be presenting draft maps. These will be all the maps that have been submitted by the public. And as was mentioned earlier, From the rollout of the first public hearings, the pre-map public hearings, the public will be given population estimates and the demographic data they need to draw maps. And as those maps come in, NDC will be producing them and presenting them in a PDF sheet. So everyone will get a PDF sheet of the map on one side, and on the back side, it'll have the demographic summary for each of the maps. It doesn't matter in what format the map was submitted. As Doug said, if it could be on a cocktail napkin, it could be using the fancy caliper Maptitude software. They all look the same once they're submitted. And obviously we'll get some that are not legally able to adopt because they'll be out of population balance, or they'll have other, they'll be non-contiguous, or they'll have other problems. And we'll point that out. But at your first post-map hearing, we'll be presenting all those draft maps. And at that, and if it's necessary for NDC to produce a couple of maps to round out the options, we will do that. But our hope is that all of the maps will come from the public. And at that time, we'll ask the commission to look at those maps and narrow them down to 3 to 5 focus maps. And we've done this numerous times. We can get 30 maps and get you down to 3 to 5. What we do is we end up grouping maps into similarities. And we'll get more into that. And so then we'll have public input on those focus maps. We'll have 2 of those meetings. We'll actually have 3 of those meetings, I'm sorry. And then we'll meet again on hearing number 5 to take and narrow those down again, so that we will narrow it down to, now we're getting closer to 2, 3, 4 maps. And then ultimately on December 1st, identify the preferred map and then adopt on December 8th after we've met the posting requirements. So we are hoping that we can get these dates confirmed so we can start getting published, because we have our first meeting that will be starting in January 16th or June 16th, and time is of the essence for us. And that concludes my presentation of the proposed timeline.
So let's take any clarifying questions from the commission. Commissioner Rios and Adams, I see your hands are still raised. I'm not sure if that's left over from last round or if you have new questions. Nope. Okay, Commissioner Trotsky.
Quick question, are these dates flexible at all? I know that this took a lot of work, but if I went back to the different associations like Montecito Association and Summerlin, and the July date didn't work, the July 7th date didn't work, is there any flexibility?
There's some, but our expectation is that there will be additional outreach meetings that each commissioner can choose to host beyond these prescribed 14. So if there is a homeowners association or a service club that wants you to come and speak, then we would encourage that to happen on top of these dates.
Okay, let's pause there and see if there's any input from the public on the calendar.
And I do have requests to speak, 2 requests to speak. The first one is from Gail Teton Landis, followed by Spencer Brandt.
Good evening, Ms. Teton Landis.
Good evening. Once again, Chair and Commissioners, thank you so much for all your work. And these meetings are impressive, and I know everyone's working hard here. Thank you very much for including the advanced schedule of hearings for input and review of the maps. And I was very encouraged by the presentation to hear that people have been able to learn to draw maps easily. And I certainly appreciate all the work that went into creating this calendar. I just want to raise a couple of issues, and there might not be anything to do about some of them because I understand that you have time requirements. Your schedule says release of state adjusted counts is early to mid-October, yet you're requiring the initial draft maps to be submitted by October 18th. And I'm just wondering if that's a realistic timeline. I'm also a bit concerned about the description for the November 3rd meeting, which calls for the presentation of draft maps and the identification of 3 to 5 focus maps. This really seems like a lot to do in one meeting that starts at 6 p.m. And I'm wondering if you would consider revising that hearing or maybe extending the time frame to ensure that there is enough time for submitters of maps to present their maps, their rationale for their maps, and that there is enough time for public comment after those presentations before NDC presents or target maps are chosen. Lastly, I just want to have a clarification of expectations on the number 5 hearing regarding newly submitted maps. I am presuming that there would be additional opportunity for public input, but does this mean that you would not be accepting revised maps from the public at that meeting? So I guess my overall concern is that the maps should be shared with the public and that there will be multiple meetings where the maps developed by the public will be discussed before it gets narrowed down or goes to staff, which I feel was the intent of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I can address some of those questions after we hear from the speakers. The next speaker is Spencer Brandt.
Mr. Brandt.
Hello, Chair Morrison, Commissioners. Good to be with you again. I just wanted to speak in support of a process once we get into the mapping phase that is kind of iterative, I guess. So a process where I think it'd be great to see at each of these 7 meetings that there would be an opportunity for the public to not just have input on focus maps, but also present their maps as well. Because I know we're all going to do a really good job to make sure that everyone is well informed of what the process is. But I think that, just as the community is digesting the process and seeing what different community members and potentially different commissioners are coming up with when it comes to the maps, I'm sure that they're not just going to want to respond and have feedback, but they're going to want to have opportunity to present their alternatives or their takes on things as well in a map form. So I think it'd be really cool if there was a way to get that at every single one of those mapping hearings. So thank you.
And I'm not seeing any additional hands raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment. And do you want to make some response comments to the questions that were raised?
Yes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So from the notes I heard was talking about this page 2 after the draft maps, the presentation of the draft maps. And we agree, we wish there was more time. But because of the delay in the census data, we're not able to present the maps until the earliest possible time is going to be the 1st of November. Let me go back up to the previous screen. Oops. The first question that was raised was a concern about the quick timeline when maps would need to be submitted in order for us to consider them for the 1st of November. And I do want to just reiterate that the mapping tools will be available in June. And the public will have that entire time to be building maps. And then we will have the release of the census data. And our hope is that the estimated populations that the public have been using will require the public only to make very few modifications to get population balance. So it's not that they will only have a couple of days to draw their maps. They will be having the ability to be drawing maps the entire time and then just make minor modifications after we get those final numbers. I also want to address the second speaker's comments about being able to share input on their own maps and their ideas during this time. And one of the best ways to do that, as Dr. Johnson pointed out, is in the Maptitude tool. And it's very effective by sharing your map. So when someone opens a map and they want to start drawing a new map, they'll see the blank template that's been set up, but they'll also see everyone's map that has been shared. So that is a very excellent way for someone to share and start the conversation about what I like about this map. And you'll hear that going on, the conversations going on at these meetings. I really like this map that's called this, but I would like to see this change, and they'll take that map and make that change. As far as narrowing it down to 3 to 5 focus maps, that does seem a very difficult task. And what we end up doing is we end up grouping the maps that have very common features. So we'll have maps, well, maybe we'll have a group of 6 maps, and they've all treated the North County area in a very specific way, and we'll group those together. And we'll go through all the maps and put them in different categories. And then the commission will look at those categories and decide which ones make sense for the final map. And then they'll look at that grouping of 6 and decide which out of the 6 best represents that best representation of this grouping of maps that has treated this certain feature a certain way. And so we've been doing this for many years, and it is possible to get down to 3 to 5. Yes, we would like to have more meeting dates, and yes, we'd like to have more times, but it's just simply not possible. During the time between that first November 3rd meeting, there are hearings 2, 3, and 4 are exactly for that purpose, for people to speak to those focus maps and present their ideas for changes. So they can even submit ideas for revising those maps. And that would be presented at hearing 5. So when we get down to hearing 5, we will actually end up with way more than 5 maps. We have people who have taken those initial focus maps and made some modifications, and then we'll be considering those. As far as starting earlier than 6, that would be ideal. We want to make sure we have a full quorum of the commissioners there. That is why we're going to very much encourage that anyone who is submitting maps, please submit the narrative with it and describe your map, because then the commission will have that in advance to be able to read the comments from the map submitter saying, these are the certain features about this map that make sense to me. So when we have all these input meetings and all these workshops, we're really going to be stressing, please submit comments with your maps. That is going to help. And then of course, there will be an opportunity for the public to speak to the maps.
And Shalice, before you go on, let me add one thing this is Doug. Also, in our experience, people presenting maps at the meetings is not very persuasive, because the commissioners and the public will be spending days prior to the meeting analyzing the maps that have come in. So people need to submit their comments, we'll process the maps and post them in that review map. That's how you win people over. Coming into the meeting and expecting to present your map cold, it isn't going to be very persuasive, just because no one will have a chance to look at it in detail, and everyone's going to want to do detailed review of these maps. So think of the actual testimony as more reaction to or more of an opportunity to react to the maps that are before the commission at that point, not really when you should be presenting your map for the first time. Thanks.
Chair Morris, I hope I covered the issues that were raised.
Yep, I think you answered the ones that I heard. So let me pose the question to Andrea or Ms. Orton. Is this something we need to formally adopt as a calendar, or does the direction to staff to just move forward suffice?
I think it would be good to have a vote that you accepted in principle. You recognize that there are comments that have been made, and that as it has already explained by NDC, there can be some flexibility, but in principle, you'd like to accept, if indeed that's what you would like to do, that you accept it in principle at this time.
Okay. Anybody prepared to make that motion, or do we need to discuss further?
I so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. And anybody want to second that? Commissioner Trosky, thank you. Ms. Tilton, you want to do a quick roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Trosky.
Aye.
Commissioner Twibell.
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock.
Aye.
Vice Chair Turley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Olmedo,
Aye.
Commissioner Bray,
Aye.
Commissioner Rios,
Aye.
Commissioner Adams,
Aye.
Chair Morris.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, folks, it looks like if you're scheduling vacation the rest of this year, it'll be sometime between mid-August and mid-September.
And then we did have a presentation from Sal regarding
Right.
ex parte communications, and do we want?
I think on behalf of Sal and me, and the fact that it's almost 10 o'clock, almost everything that we have to say can be easily put into the agenda item when we are doing our outreach materials during that role play. The only reminder, I think, from both of us is that you really are in the outreach mode now, and it is crucial that you report those ex parte communications as our ordinance requires. There's been a great deal of press about the state process and what they're allowed to do in terms of ex parte communications. Again, look to our ordinance. Our ordinance not only permits, but encourages the type of ex parte communications we've spoken of before, but it is important to log them.
Very good. So we'll move that item to a future agenda, which takes us to item 11, which is about future agenda items. Ms. Tilton, I would like one item that I will want to put on here is the appointment of a replacement commissioner for Commissioner Olmedo. Date to be determined based on his choice of when he moves forward with that. However, in anticipation of that, can we ask that you begin outreach to the District 3 candidates to determine interest and identify who would be willing to be considered? Very good.
I will do so.
Anybody else have items that you'd like to add to a future agenda? Ms. Trosky.
When do we start reaching out to the candidates that did apply that we want to use as ambassadors, or when do we start engaging them?
Yeah, I suspect that'll come up as we talk about the outreach tool training at our next meeting and how we can get them materials as well. So, yeah, very good reminder. Anybody else? All right, Ms. Tilden, do you want to just give us a quick preview of what is on next on our June, what is that, June 3rd? Have that date right?
Second.
Second. All right.
June 2nd. Can you see that on the screen?
Uh-huh.
So this looks like a small item. It's going to be a big item. It will be the rollout of all the marketing materials, and this will be the opportunity where the commission will get some coaching on the talking points, the wording that should be used, wording that should be avoided, and like I said, on Friday you'll be sent to you from Tri-Pappy and Smith the marketing materials, the website, links to the videos. And so we'll ask that between now and June 2nd, you get those comments back to Tri-Pappy and Smith so they can be incorporated into the materials as we present them on June 2nd. And then as Chair Moore said, we'll also have the item about appointing Commissioner Olmedo, and then we can talk further about outreach and bringing in some of those quote unquote ambassadors to help with those smaller community outreach meetings.
And Chair Morris, if I can just reinforce that, at least you can take that off, but just reinforce the commissioners that the materials we sent out to you as drafts, and the idea is to incorporate your changes and present the final version June 2nd, not to have you come back with your comments June 2nd. So when you get them, the team will be sending you a requested deadline for you to get your comments back.
So homework.
Yep.
Very well. Anything else, folks, for the good of the order tonight? If not, thank you for sticking with us. We covered a lot of ground this evening. As Ms. Orden's already pointed out, the hour is late. For some of us later than others. And we appreciate everybody's commitment to being here. We thank those from the public that are continue to engage in this process with us. And we will see everybody on June the 2nd. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night.